Send it to the world. Oh, you did? You well?
Good, yeah, well.
Still writing a bit?
Yeah, still writing a lot. Yeah, writing a lot.
It's good. Oh, these belong to. Do you remember Brendan's wife? Brendan used to do my service work. Passed away about a year on disease. Yeah. So this is rosemary stuff. So basically, part of the estate. So these aren't available anymore. He used to do a lot of stuff for CMI. And so everything just down to pretty much bits and bobs and things that are left over from the estate. But it's probably $10 each. Yeah, just you can see these are 70. These are 125. But none of these are available anymore. They're all sold out. Yeah, seeing like that. Yeah, bought myself a nice bike. KTM, the new bike. No, road bike. Yeah, the nice bike. Right. So, that's the only step. Oh, it's a nice bike. Really happy. Really happy with it. Yeah. I've had it's at the moment sitting in the floor room, just sort of last week with the green. Yeah. Maybe stuff on I've got no ACL left in it anymore. Not much in the way of part of it, so it's no spot from here to here. I'm trying to sort that before I go back. So normally see a PT twice a week. Since Christmas, I'm doing 3 hours. So do nothing. Basically, do example swimming. I swim about 1 times a day.
I'm going there.
Finally finished off a rule that we've had on the go for ages. We've had outdoor tools. Sometimes it's always How are you, Richard?
Thanks, yeah. How are you? There's your big business.
It's good. I give it a fault. Look, when I throw it on the ground, in hand is not a positive drive. It's slightly loose, so you can sometimes not know whether it's exactly on.
Okay.
So you really got
You
to.
probably find that jumps every 20 seconds.
Yeah, it's something like that. But sometimes the jump into a minute position is a little bit not the same exactly. So that whatever's driving that motor just a little bit backlash. Oh, yeah. This I'm going to Queensland trying to adjust it for the day like that. Crown out, push button. Everything else. I went online. I did it from what you remember when so I went online with instructions. Try to do it
Round out and push. That button.
There you go. There you go. You got some money on you.
Yeah. I got some of them from TMI.
I'll get them in. This is Brent Wire stuff. These are all new. They're no longer
Manager, we've got 6 viewers so far.
6 viewers.
Yeah, 7 people watching it.
How many watching?
7.
Woohoo!
They can hear us too, by the way. Don't say anything too bad.
Lucky door. Number 1.
Raffle ticketing.
No, we get no license today.
Thank you. I'll give you a prize. registered by them. Stop.
Oh, you've only got one in as a lucky draw?
No, we've already got a lucky draw.
No, we've got two. Well, there's two series and then half of it.
Oh, really?
I thought this.
You can try listening to that there.
Well, yeah.
Try.
Yeah, 10 bucks each. That's, someone was about 7. Yeah, something. These were all 17.
So what did you value?
These are correcting ones, just the last. Take one down. I can give you a box. What I do with my lucky door thing now. Thank you very much.
Too late. You're number one.
Oh, they'll clash.
Here, see if they.
They'll clash. It's only, so a couple of times where I'm trying to set up something on a GPS system, when you know you've got to be absolutely on top, you look at it and go, is it, where is it? Yeah. So you've really got to watch carefully.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So now it's coming up to 3/4 and this is 20 seconds fast.
Yeah.
It pulses in seconds. That one's coming up. So yeah, so it fades a little bit. It's not so hard on the actual minute markers. Thank you. So yeah, good. Yeah. So $10 now and $10 next month for the next 10 months.
You never made that clear.
Oh, sorry. Cool. Magic. Well done.
When we search at WCA Meeting.
It's about 6.
I'll send it as an email now anyway, so they know.
Do you want to change now?
Oh, okay. I'll just keep it. You might want to do it later.
Just so what you keep a careful note.
Yeah, how many people are here? Yeah.
$10 each, though. Money's the bag. All yours.
Oh.
Spare bags there if you want them.
Smile.
John.
What was your name here?
Great.
There you go. That's what.
It's gone well. It was a long drawn out. You know. The radiation was unbelievable. I just couldn't believe it. This company she was going great right up until the very last day of the marriage. She's gone well now. So we're a prayer off.
Not bad, not bad. $10 each. You need lots of those, mate.
And yet we cover leave them. Oh, yes, give me the way. Second one, you get a crystal.
I'll give you another one.
Okay.
You can give that to. No, that's I'll give it to him so he can send it to me.
How much are we?
How much is it?
How much?
$30. $29.95.
$30, I think I can send that.
You can? Okay. Michael. So I do have a new microphone.
You said this on it. Was it delayed?
Yes, there will be a slight fee. Generally, it depends on how fast the Wi-Fi is. The faster the Wi-Fi, you should have
Is that delayed?
that way you actually have it all. Can you go? Really? Oh, this is bricks.
He's should have done it. Maybe go find him.
No,
Yeah,
When you go, I mean,
So you clean the bricks or?
no, I haven't cleaned them yet.
Oh, so it's the.
Oh, no.
No.
Yeah, no, I cleaned them. Yeah, air gun.
Oh, okay.
And when you look at the other one, I'm waiting for this one to return.
You need to go and speak to a guy. Guy by the name of Serena, does a bit like the reconstruction first number. She's doing stem cell research. Actually, yeah, yeah. Basically, what they do is they do liposuction, harvest the fat up, take the stem cell out of the fat, and they basically inject it back into the joint. And they say that's excessive.
So that's
Bag.
70 meters of that, by 3 meters wide, 120.
Then you have how much you get done on the weekend?
I was going through, I was getting 3 ton of concrete mix. Going back to cement.
Not too much. Where
how are you? I'm good. Oh, I see. Why aren't you down in the apple? Come back after 3 weeks. No, you haven't got tails. You settled in?
We moved into the house, and half the house is down there. So we got the bike down 3 days ago, and met the couple of days after the ride, and went to the Warren Boat Festival. Flying into the house for about 2-3 weeks. Hit the launch for the first time. Came up the camp in the morning, never went back out. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, but it's already. You've got to be. I know it's.
I thought you said children.
I didn't find myself in there. Look what we see.
Nice to see you.
Make sure you got one.
Just go to our friends.
It's not too bad, actually, over the last 2 days, it's improved. No. Just putting it on. I'll get it. I'll send it. I'll send it. Yeah, they're on you. Yeah. I'll stick this on the seat somewhere.
$5 at
Sorry. I did that. Now that's the second.
I like that.
Wives always say their husbands do very good jobs on their own box. True.
You can have it stop notes.
Yeah, we can try.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but proving lasts probably a couple of weeks. Better than it was. I can top quite fast now.
But I don't have to. I'm not going to solve the last one, which was
I don't know why. Some businesses
You should stock up, maybe. You only sell stuff once, a lot of sell more than once.
All right.
Well, what about?
Of course you can't trust.
But now I can even say now when I do some of those sort of watches, I think that's password. I mean, I had that ring. Yeah.
Winning ticket, right?
No, I guess you won the last two.
Everyone went for 6.
Just What if you would get the telephone?
Anything, if I can get you all to take a seat, that would be appreciated.
Oh, I can make it sound real bad.
All right. How are you? Good to see you, very well. No, the Ralph is here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
No, right for today, okay.
Good.
You can have that. And I'll try it. Yeah, that's. What does it feel like?
Something felt like money. Must be that 6 cents in my finger.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, right. I was supposed to be a while ago.
The annoying thing is that there was a slinger behind that came in. We had it. Yes, no problem. We'll come and get it. No problem. Took off, sold it.
Oh no, buggers.
One guy walked in and bought it.
Didn't hold it for you. Well, I suppose at the end of the day,
Well, we were the day. That was the day we had it. We were going the next day. Someone came in that day and simply bought it. It's fine. Oh, good idea. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was just one. Thank everybody for coming and a very warm welcome to our first meeting for 2015. And once again, I'd like to thank all members and their guests for their support of the WCA tonight by your attendance. Many on our branch executive consider this to be one of the most important meetings for many years. And so tonight we will be streaming live coverage across the country and of course around the world. We have people very keen in New Zealand to know what's happening tonight. We know as an industry, we know that the success of tonight's meeting and the outcomes from it will have a direct bearing on the viable future for our organisation. And of course, the vitally important topic of the future direction for trade training and quality skills development for Australia, for watch and clock repairs. On behalf of the New South Wales and South Australia branch executive, we are delighted to also warmly welcome the following industry guests. I'd first like to welcome Mr. Richard Hayes, my boss, from Sydney TAFE, Faculty Director, Manufacturing, Engineering and Electrotechnology at Ultimo. Richard, give us a wave. We also have another one of my bosses, Kurt Franks, who is the Assistant Director, Relieving Manufacturing and Engineering at Ultimo. Welcome, Kurt. I'm also delighted to welcome Olivia David. Olivia is the Head of Customer Service Swatch Group Australia in Melbourne. Thank you, Olivia. We also have Gary Manu, Operations Manager from Seiko Australia. The industry people all stick together. I'm also delighted to welcome for the first time Graham Baker, WCA President from Victoria. Graham, welcome. We also have one of the heart and soul of our industry, Michael Smith from Smith & Smith, I believe. Very high Mike there. Michael is the wholesale parts supplier in Australia. We also have Joe Santos, another parts supplier. Have I missed anybody? My apologies if we have. We have received a number of apologies for tonight. I'm going to read them so you know who's not here. First of all, we have apologies from Mark Wilson, who's the head teacher of watchmaking and locksmithing in Sydney TAFE. Unfortunately, he has not been well. We have apologies from Anne-Marie Robson, from Customer Services Manager at Richmond, Australia. Apologies from Shalam Gokul Prasada, After Sales Manager for TAFE Hoya in Sydney. We received apologies from Martin Foster, Peter Eakins, Carl Anderson, Federal Vice President of the WCA. Paul Ward, but Paul's actually here, so thanks Paul for that. Must have misread that email. Paul Kennett made apologies from Coffs Harbour. John Ablin from Jurywell, and I'll take apologies from Paul. Roger Healy from Queenstown. There you go, New Zealand.
Carl is apologising.
Kaiho Lung.
Bill Morgan.
Bill Morgan.
Toru from Seika, the MD.
Sorry, I missed that.
Izumi.
Izumi?
IZUMI.
Managing Director of Seika. Thank you very much.
And Joel as well, who was supposed to arrive. Joel went, but he just arrived by plane from Switzerland after 2 weeks course with Bulgaria in Switzerland. So he's
Okay. I'll just check my efficient secretary has got all of those.
I've got it recorded, actually.
So that's a trust.
And Richard Kivish? Richard Kivish. I'm sorry. Yeah. Michael Barnes.
Is that what we call a senior moment?
Michael Barnes.
Michael Barnes, okay. I will introduce you to Kerry Booth. Kerry Booth is the New South Wales South Australian Branch Secretary. She does a wonderful job. I think we all attend. No further apologies. We'll move on to our topic. The future for watch and clock repairers training at Sydney TAFE. Many of you in attendance here tonight are aware that I am a teacher of watch and clock repair and currently in my 29th year of teaching at Sydney Tech, Sydney Institute, and now Sydney TAFE. In light of the fact that I may be rightly perceived that I have a conflict of interest in chairing tonight's proceedings, I have decided to stand down from the role, and tonight I'll be taking a step back in the deliberations of this meeting. We now please welcome Mr. Ross Robinson, New South Wales Branch Secretary, Life Membership of the WCA, to be our first speaker and provide some background or overview of trade training in Australia, and also to be chairperson and moderator for tonight's forum. Thank you for your attention.
It was called Sydney Technical College when I started there. But look, it's great to see such good and interested people because I think you can understand that I would have some passion with regard to the future of the college, having worked there, not as long as Trent, I must say now. I only worked there for 27 years. But the watchmaking school in Sydney has been operating now since 1970. And I guess it's a tribute to the our forebears from the watch and clockmakers or the horological guild that it was first started after pressure from the horological guild to start the course in Sydney. And that resulted in the first classes being held, and the first teacher there was Edgar Daly. I don't think many of you will remember Edgar Daly. Oh, Michael does. Yeah. That's probably sad to you. Yes, but it was natural causes. Yes. But so Edgar Daly talked for a little while, and then Jack Wolfe was appointed. And I guess there's probably a few people in the room that probably had Jack Wolfe as teacher. He was appointed in the early 1950s, and he retired. He had ill health in around 1970-71, when numbers were a bit low. He retired. So I don't know if that was what yours at the time. There was not a decision made to employ another full-time teacher straight away. So you can see that numbers have been sort of an issue for the watchmaking section for a lot of years. But finally, I started part-time teaching in 1972. It was pretty hard graft, and then I was appointed in 73. And I was there teaching in the section till about 1986, 1987, when Trent was appointed full-time. I did spend a little bit of time in the ivory tower, as they used to call it then, you know, working for TAFE New South Wales. The Watch and Clockmakers of Australia has always been committed to the watchmaking section of the college, and we've committed over the years. We've done a lot of work, and we've done a lot to ensure that the equipment there was good. You know, it's probably an aside to say, when I first started to teach there, there was sort of these horrible masonite desks that went from side to side in the room. They each had a sort of a wooden post that stood up on them, onto which you could attach a 32-volt light globe. And the array of tools that you used were really something that might have come off the ark. You know, it was a pretty horrible sort of situation. When I was really fortunate when I first started that the state supervisor was impressed by my plea, and immediately we saw a transformation in what was happening in terms of tools and equipment. You know, at virtually no cost to TAFE in 1970, we negotiated with Watchmakers of Switzerland, who were just happened to be closing their training centre in Kent Street in Sydney. And all of the goods and chattels that they had, the furniture, equipment, everything was located to Sydney College. And I know I also saw those benches, you know, were there really until not so long ago. And a lot of the equipment was good equipment, it's still there. So of course that was the first fortuitous thing that happened, and all those benches all went by the wayside. Subsequently, in more recent years, it was really a travesty in a way, because people worked very hard for the establishment of a wash step school in Melbourne. And you know, there was a terrific amount of work done by Michael Presser and others to try and get that school up and running. The difficulty was, if I could sort of try and make it easy for you, is that the wash step course is a 3,000-hour course, the full course, and a lot of that's to do with the development of hand skills. A Certificate 3 course is only 864 hours duration. So how are we going to operate a course within the Certificate 3 framework to meet the outcomes that WashStep expected from their 3,000-hour program? Well, you know, we met with Antoine Simonet at City College, and I met with Peter Roberts and Antoine. We just simply said, look, we can't have them, mate. You know, we can't do it because we won't get funded to deliver it. Funny word, isn't it? We can't get funded. Eh? So subsequently then, you know, that's when all the hard work went in. You know, down in Melbourne, Michael Preston did all this work to try and develop a 3,000-hour course. And, you know, there was actually a file full of work that he did. And I think he must have been broken hearted when at the end they said, well, there's not enough academic rigour in this program. We can't have a diploma course in watchmaking. Because they would have got paid better, wouldn't they? So then that school in Melbourne, they tried to get teachers for it. I think Michael Presser sort of waved goodbye, and they couldn't get anybody. Michael Sampson worked there for a little while, and others. In the end, you know, we had a call and we went down there and we met with Rosemary Deacon, and the end result of that, all of the equipment, and there's been a significant industry contribution. If you look at the benches in the watchmaking section, you'll see all the companies that put in serious money, you know, not less than $5,000 a go, towards the buying of equipment and, you know, the furniture and everything else that's in the watchmaking section. And, you know, we managed to persuade them we look after it for them, so it was transferred to Sydney. And so that was the next upgrade for Sydney College. Still no hands in the pocket from TAFE New South Wales. So tonight, you know, it's great to look around this room, and I see a lot of people that I've recognised from standing in a similar position. But our students from Sydney College, when we were having dinner tonight, Olivia said to me, or Auntie Roger actually said about the achievements of our students and how they sort of weighed up against students from other parts of the world. And, we've had a number of students that have been awarded the WCA used to sponsor charitable fellowships with a lot of support from people in industry. And that was to send students over to do the Watchmakers of Switzerland Training and Education Program, a 6 months course in Neuchâtel. Some other people have gone over there independently or with the support of their employers. So there's been, I don't know what the number would be, but I guess there might be half a dozen students from Sydney College that have attended that course in Neuchâtel. Another ex-student of mine from Newcastle, he set up the WASTEP course in Hong Kong, from its foundation, procured all the equipment and everything, got it running in Hong Kong. And of course, we have another student who not so many years ago, got through the course in Sydney, went over to WASTEP and is now teaching for WASTEP. And so I think we've got a fair bit of evidence that despite our small size and small numbers, that we've sort of been punching above our weight. We have graduates highly positioned in all the major service centres, managers for Rolex, Time Swatch Group and Seiko, all these people that have come through our training in Sydney. And some of our graduates who stayed in Australia have still been pretty high achievers, They're doing world-class service, challenging work, in good workshop, and they're achieving, great results in their businesses as well. And I think, that's not to be sneezed at as being a great way to put back, and a lot of them employ apprentices now. So that's what comes around as goes around. Of course, I probably doesn't want me to talk about this, but a former classmate of mine and who was once a WCA President, Doug Mitty, he presented courses at TAFE for a long time in clock servicing skills. And he's been a director of the NAWCC in the United States. And not so many years ago was awarded an OAM for his contribution to the industry. Congratulations, Doug, that was a great feat. So when I think back now, to get back to the chase, when I started teaching at Sydney College, the curriculum was 4 foolscap pages. This is our foolscap, there might have been 6 pages on A4 moment. But that was the whole curriculum for a course, for a 3-year course. And the previous teacher that had been gone for a while, he took everything with him because he didn't want it to be poached by part-time teachers. And so you talk about getting thrown into the deep end, and it was a diabolical type of course. In those days, every course seemed to have a theory strand, practical strand, trade calcs, drawing, and then later on we adapted, had some trade science. I think that came in probably the 80s sometime. And I remember some of those initial textbooks that were drawn that were almost like comic books. But the course curriculum was a pretty dodgy document by anybody's measure. And of course, having accepted that we had this really loose document, it was still very hard to change that. And so when quartz watches came out, we all of a sudden, you can imagine 1973 when I started in April, we had these quartz watches being thrust upon us. I was trying to think whether it was a Seiko or a Roma was the first one I saw. I can't remember. But either way, they were pretty basic products in those days. But of course, everybody, including me, that was in the trade then was thinking, well, where's this going to finish, And we were up for a really big challenge. So I thought, well, what we need, because I couldn't get quartz watches into the curriculum. So I thought, oh, well, what about if we do a subject called trade science, and we'll do electronics with a bit of quartz watch practical in it. So that's the only way I could get quartz watches into the curriculum in those days. Of course, there was a lot of support from Switzerland then, I went over there because, really you're packing it, your first year, at the end of the first year of teaching, you're sort of up to here, you don't know which way is up. And so I went over to Switzerland and I just went to everybody that, was running an agency in Sydney. Can you give me a letter of introduction? Everybody I went to. And I all did. I went over there and I was accepted. I couldn't believe the acceptance or the welcoming that I received. I did courses with Omega, Longines, Roma, Satina, all these different companies, but the important one was the course I did at ESAR, through the Electronics Centre at Mara, the Airbosh Electronic. And I met Remy Weckley, who subsequently has passed away. And he became a great supporter of the college, without asking. Movements used to turn up. And I don't mean, 5 at a time, I mean 20 at a time, classroom lots. Every new calibre as it came out, these watches would be delivered at the end of the year, ready for the next year. When quartz watches were hardly being seen in the workshops, we were awash with them. We had hundreds of them for practical exercises at the college. So that was a great time, As a matter of fact, we formed very close liaison with them, and we were distributing all of their technical documentation through the horological building those days. So every time a new model came out came in servicing book into the envelope, and our members had it, more or less straight away. They probably didn't use them for a couple of years till I actually saw the watches. And of course, I look around the room and I remember times that Carl Parkhoff at those days was working, closely aligned with the Swiss watch industry. And Carl he was running seminars for watchmakers, and Carl and I collaborated on a lot of work in those days. In the 1980s, the curriculum went to a modular course, which was really great because it focused the study into areas of skills and into products, So all of a sudden you could do a whole module on balance staff, fitting, poising, everything to do with that. Whereas before, in the old curriculum, you sort of did the trade science bit on how springs worked, and then you went into the workshop and you drew pictures, you did drawing and you drew balance staffs and all this sort of stuff. But, by the time you got to actually do them, it was some months later or years later because we couldn't integrate that very well. So the modular course was a great thing. I liked it because it was a good time to be teaching. We had a good curriculum. The assessment process was really refined. It was absolutely well documented, and it seemed to flow without, and you knew when you set an exam paper that you'd covered the bases. You knew that the students had all target on all the things that had to be done. And so it was a great time to be teaching. And of course, and coupled with the donation of equipment from the watchmakers of Switzerland, the section was pretty well equipped, really. In those days, we had an advisory committee, an industry advisory committee that looked after the watchmaking course on its own. And that consisted of, obviously the teacher from the section, but then, head people from the industry. I think at times it was federal presidents and state presidents and people that were really interested in training. And those people got to meet with the state supervisor. If they were unhappy about something that wasn't being passed on through their teacher, no, let's go to the top. And so you go there and keep the state super. And I used to word them up before, no, I didn't do that. But we used to got a lot of things that came into the section after the advisory committee meeting. Of course, what changed, and I was there for a lot of this change, was the move towards competency-based training and training packages. And, it's really been a period of about 20 years because it was a really great change, to go from a curriculum that TAFE owned and developed into a curriculum that somebody else gave you from people that were appointed to represent the industry. Of course, there was never any watchmakers that ever worked at Manufacturing Skills Australia. But nevertheless, we did consult, and Trent and I were only talking the other day about meetings we used to have with the industry, with Nick Juniper and people like that, trying to wrap through curriculum. But we had to involve other people from the trade in all states. And, it's always problematic when there's too many people in the room. But anyway, we worked through, and the training packages have been developed. I mean, initially, look, I was one of the people, I was a card carrier, basically, for the training packages. Because I could see that if the curriculum came from industry, in other words, they gave you the skills that they wanted you to have, then surely if you delivered that, you were in the ace position. And if they were involved as well in giving you feedback to say, yes, I'd like to do this now, and all that sort of thing, I thought, well, this is a great idea. But of course, in a trade like ours, things like that are really hard to coordinate. And I think that what we've seen is sort of there's been a kind of shift in that. The training packages were available to any registered training organisation, and that was the reason for cutting TAFE out as an owner of the curriculum. So now that these curriculums could be used by other people. I was at Sydney College when we had to seek RTO status. And that was a big thing for us. We had to go through all this systems analysis, all this making sure we complied with Australian Standard 90,000 or something or other. And every process that we had in the college had to be documented, so that somebody could come in and look through and say, oh, look, if a student doesn't pass, what do you do? Go to this document here, it tells you what to do. If a teacher, if the student misbehaves in class, how do you deal with it? Well, here it is, it's documented here. Everything that happened in the college was documented. And of course, we achieved it. Not quite sure how, there was a lot of hard work involved, but then it wasn't something that you could accept because each year there was an audit. They came back and did that again. I anticipate that's still happening. And of course, larger employers or apprentices were encouraged to have their own assessors on staff. So if you had a big enterprise and you had a lot of apprentices, you would have assessors on staff and you would assess whether your students were achieving what you hoped they achieved. And if you were a big enough employer, you might decide to gain RTO status yourself and not send them to the college. You might do all that yourself. And we saw a lot of companies like Email and Mazda and Electro Skills Centre and the plumbers, all of those people all set up these RTOs, and some of them have not really returned their apprentices to the class in TAFE at all. So the training package became the checklist. It started off with good intent, but after having employers, and as I said, I agree that having employers involved is a great idea, but in the implementation it was a bit problematic. In our industry, the notion that small business operators have the time and the resources necessary to provide, structured training on the job has not really been true. I mean, look, there's some other examples. I know at one time Swatch Group had a trainer on staff and they were doing, update training and things like that. I'm not sure about Seiko. Gary might say yes or no. I don't think there's been a great push there towards training in-house. Even under the Training Guarantee Act, everybody used to rip a few dollars off, didn't they, to do something, but hardly ever was focused towards technical skills. In our industry, I was surprised to hear tonight that Swatch Group now have 20 technicians working in their workshop in Melbourne. I think that's obviously clearly the largest group of people in one location. Probably Seiko's about 10 is there, Gary. And when I think about a lot of the other places, well, I go past some where there's only one apprentice and one employer, and they're working in a bloody kiosk. Well, I'd like to know how that bloke can provide structured training while he's got a few people waiting out batteries within their watch. It's a pretty unachievable goal. But for anybody where the ratio of apprentice to employer is 1-to-1, it's always going to be a really difficult task. And I guess that's what I see is the challenge. Sorry, I'm trying to stop getting to the sound. Okay, sorry. So that's really the challenge for our trade, is basically the small workshops, small numbers of people, and for us to take on the training in-house is really an awkward proposition. So this year, the state government's implemented a policy, Smart and Skilled, the result of this change of policy is to place more emphasis on the costs of training and to make other RTOs more competitive with TAFE. I mean, it's as plain as the nose on your face. If you're running a TAFE college with library, counselling services, canteens, and all of the other things that you have to provide, you know, an occupational health and safety committee and every other thing, you know, it's pretty hard to compete with somebody that's on a factory site up the road with, you know, a couple of classrooms in the corner and a few lathes or, you know, kit for teaching electricians. It's pretty hard to compete on a cost basis with that sort of operation. For us, Sydney TAFE is now the only registered and accredited training provider for the Certificate 3 course in watch and clock service and repair. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? So all of the students that are doing that Certificate 3 course are attending Sydney College. So apart from ones from the West, because we, you know, we speak a different language or something over there. But, you know, from Adelaide, Tasmania, you know, from Brisbane, from Victoria, they all come to Sydney College. And generally there's been arrangements entered into to help fund that participation. I mean, I think that might be something that's currently being negotiated. So, you know, it's apparent that the teacher's role is changing a bit to being a skills assessor, particularly where we haven't got the numbers to fund full training effort. And so his job's going to be more of an assessor and record keeping role as we see it. You know, we're worried that the role of the current teacher could be diminished to the point that a full-time position is no longer viable. And so the teacher could be made redundant. The difficulties faced by our trade in reconciling these changes is compounded by the fact that so many of our businesses are sole traders. The decision by TAFE management to defer enrolments for stage 1 students until at least April is apparently to allow further consultation between government employers and industry. We can only hope that the WCA is included in these consultations, as there's not been a good record of that happening in the past. We can't really handle the fact that Manufacturing Skills Australia will be the first and last point of call for negotiation with what's happening in our industry. First year enrolments have been deferred. Smart and Skilled seems to be primarily designed to drastically reduce training costs to government by shifting a lot of the cost and responsibility back to the employers, as well as increasing the cost of training to the apprentice students. What's next? Well, clearly the application of Smart and Skilled sounds the death knell to our trade. The WCA has a vested interest in strongly opposing it, and by convening this meeting, is trustful of gaining your active support. It is equally clear that this opposition must be at political level, as TAFE itself is really not the driver, we don't feel, and must respond to its political masters. With an election in New South Wales in the offing, the time to make a strong protest is opportune. And we ask you to make representations to your local parliamentarians in ways you deem appropriate. Now, we'll be happy to provide some format letters. And we also ask that later on that there's a resolution to be put at the conclusion of the meeting demanding that the plight of smaller and not perhaps so important trades like ours be reassessed before being sabotaged by Smart and Skilled. And that's the case as I see it. Thank you. I don't think I'll call for questions at this time because I think we've got some other people who are going to say a few words and perhaps we'll have a question time later. Unless anybody has got like me got the dementia, you come up and get the question. I think we'll move on. All of us. So next we're going to call on Richard Hayes, who's faculty director from Sydney College, looking after engineering and manufacturing. So, okay. call upon you to turn it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and talk this evening. We did get a heads up by Trent that it'd be good for us to come along and have a talk to you this evening. At Sydney TAFE, I'm the faculty director, as we heard, for the Manufacturing, Engineering and Electrotechnology faculty. Now, that's quite a mouthful. It means we cover about 15 different teaching areas. And one of those teaching areas includes our locksmithing, security and watchmaking section within the faculty. So my role is to oversee the management of the faculty completely. Kirk is with me this evening, and Kirk manages approximately half of that faculty, of which that section is part of Kirk's management responsibility. So my job tonight is to come and talk to you about Smart and Skilled, and to give you a bit of an update about Smart and Skilled. But what I'd like to do is firstly open it up to everybody out there to tell me what they know about Smart and Skilled, because I think Smart and Skilled has been one of those government policies that's been implemented, and I'd like to reinforce that point, that it is a government policy that's been implemented. And I'd like to make the point further there that this isn't a TAFE New South Wales or a Sydney TAFE or Sydney College implementation of a system. This is a state government implementation. TAFE New South Wales are the registered training organisation, the RTO, that are asked to deliver training in accordance with the Smart and Skilled policy. Now that policy has had lots of people talking. There's been a lot of media about the policy, and I'm sure if you, like I do in the morning, listen to 702, you've heard that with the minister's been on 702 talking about policy. We've had various people ringing up and talking about the implementation of Smart and Skilled. And it's been an interesting ride for us to transition from what we would previously see as core funding, as state government funding to run programs, to now moving into a very competitive environment. So, does anybody know anything about the workings of Smart and Skilled, about what it is and how it's going to affect training in New South Wales? Kirk, you've got to put your hand down, unfortunately, because you and I live and breathe it. I noticed Trent's been very quiet up the back there too, so thanks, Trent.
I'll be the first stirrer in it. I listened to Andrew Piccolo, the Minister for Education, this morning, and one of the things he was talking about was better value for the dollar spent. He was also talking about that the dollar spent had to lead to jobs.
Right.
They were trying to get away from the pottery courses and the basket weaver courses, and they were very sorry that some of the other trades went back, but it was really looking, however they achieved it, was to make sure somebody got a job out of the course.
Right.
That was what I heard this morning, which I thought was rather interesting. One other comment, he did say that the air conditioning people that were $2,300 for 3 years are now about $7,800, or are going to be somewhere about $7,800. So I was a bit shocked at that.
Interesting figures.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It really was.
My take on it is a little bit simple. Funnily enough, you probably derived from 67 years experience of political promises and reality. To me, the whole core of the changes go back to what one statement that Ross has already made, in that the whole appears that the whole rationale for this project, which is the culmination of direction that they've been going in for many years is simply to cost shift the cost of technical training away from state government coffers into private industry, regardless of what detriment that may have to training itself. Perhaps that's simplistic. To me, everything else seems to follow on from that.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting observation. I think it's an observation that we've seen before. It might be one of those things like flared pants that sort of recycles every now and again. But a lot of you will obviously remember the fact that universities had quite a quantum shift, and that's probably 20, 25 years ago now, where universities very much went to a user pays system, where the government would still support government funded or government supported programs to an extent, but certainly no longer was it a degree for free. And essentially our training up to this year, up to 2015, has been training for free. And we won't say it's exactly free, it's for minimal input. So the individual would only pay a very minimal amount. Now what the state government's saying is that, sure, the individual might pay slightly more, but certainly for the course we're talking about, and certainly if these students are apprentices, the fee increase has not been substantial at all. In fact, what we've done is we've calculated that for some of the courses that we run through the faculty, the fees under Smart and Skilled, the student fee, would actually be less than what it would have been under a previous funding model. That's because students would traditionally pay about $270 per semester to attend. They would then pay a course-related charge that would cover all of the consumable items that they use during that training. And of course, any of the items that they would then make and take home with them as well would also be charged. That would add up sometimes to $100 per semester, sometimes maybe slightly more, sometimes maybe slightly less, depending on the program it was running. In that case, it could easily account for more than about $60 per semester. And if we look at the current structure of Smart and Skilled, it's a $2,000 fee for the apprentice, and for a traditional trade would be divided over 6 semesters, which would be about $333 per semester. So that's under our current model. So that's the student fee. And that student fee, for information, makes up a component of what the state government is now calling a qualification price. So there were various qualification prices set by IPART, so they were a state government set price. And every course was assessed. As Ross pointed out, the industry bodies, and in this case MSA, were consulted, and through that consultation process, every program that's offered through not just TAFE New South Wales, but any registered training organisation, was set a qualification price. I don't think anyone could go against us for saying that that the qualification prices that were set were, certainly in my experience, lower than what we might have hoped they would be. So, as Ross has pointed out, the training, the money that's provided for training, and not just obviously in launch and clock service and repair, but also in the multiple number of courses that we run for approximately 65,000 students every year, were not at the levels that we may have hoped they would be. Gentleman over here.
Just leaving the finances aside for the moment, I think the greatest disadvantage of Smart and Skilled, particularly for the smaller trades, is the level of uncertainty it's created in young people looking for jobs. I know in our trade, not only the young people, the people who may have been willing to take on the apprentice have shied away from it because of the additional responsibility and cost. And I think that's probably one of the greatest disadvantages. I don't see any positive points at all in creating jobs for any of the smaller trades, particularly bearing in mind the trouble we had in getting listed on the skill list to start with. Some of the smaller than us, if that's possible, aren't even there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Certainly, it's a good point, the size of your industry. Certainly for us at Sydney TAFE, you do constitute the smallest delivery area within the faculty, and there isn't many other courses that we would offer that would have the student numbers that are represented within the course that we're currently running, that Trent's currently teaching on. So I think the point about employers have been shying away from putting people on because of the cost. For the apprenticeship, like I said, the cost has been set at $2,000. And me, for one, I would argue that cost isn't a substantial increase on what the previous training was for us. Yeah. So obviously there's cost to the employer as well.
Look, I think, going to history, I think we've done exactly 360. Because if you go back in the 80s, in the 19th century, if you want to do apprenticeship, you had to pay for the apprenticeship. Actually, taken on, you had to pay. And we have done 360. Now, I understand that one has to pay for education. Personally, I think I concur with that. However, what I don't understand is that you actually, in a way it's going to be implemented now, that actually produces the quality of education. And that, I think, is a far more important thing. Because in the end, you pay more and you get less quality. Because if you, well, not only personally, but if the person who is actually enrolled in the college, if you take watchmaking, that you had a course which was, I think, 240 hours. And now you have to teach the same thing in 125 hours or 140 hours. Now, I don't think this is a good deal. So therefore, you're paying more money, getting less fluid. I think I wouldn't go shopping there. So I think that is a way of one way to go about it. Basically, that people saying, "No, that product is not good. I'm not going to take it." Henceforth, they can say, "Well, look, we don't have any people to close it down." So it seems to me it's a way out of, instead of politically. Again, I think it's politically designed to diminish it and say, well, I'm getting instead of enough students, so hence we have to stop it. But that plays exactly to the opposite what is basically politically pushed forward, that to create jobs. And I'm sorry to say that if you have a workforce which is not qualified, you'll find it much more difficult in getting a job than someone who has to go through a proper training will find education, will find a job. So that argument in trying to get produce a training which gets your people being more employable, I think it doesn't hold up in my opinion.
Okay. I'd certainly agree with a lot of the points you brought up there. At Sydney TAFE, we're committed to providing a quality educational product. The funding that we have got for the course, like we said, it wasn't what we may have hoped it would be. So what we've done is we've actually gone back to the governing body that is now in charge of the tender process for Smart and Skill. And what we discovered was that through some of the documentation that we read, that they did say that there was an opportunity for funding what they would call a thin market. Okay, the thin market funding.
Okay.
Okay. If ever we were going to find a typical thin market, then what we're talking about this evening does qualify for that thin market funding. So thin market funding essentially is for low enrolment, low number courses that industry sees as relevant, and that there is only one provider offering that qualification for. So what we did, I actually wrote the paper. We had to go back and write a paper for every representation that we wanted to make for a thin market funding back to the state government. So I wrote a paper, in this case for watch and clock service and repair. I wrote a paper for locksmithing, because again at Sydney TAFE we're the only provider for locksmithing. And one of my colleagues wrote a paper for jewellery making and repair. So 3 areas that we thought were typical thin market funding opportunities. That was in an attempt to support the training, to exactly reinforce the points that you made, that we felt the funding wasn't enough to give us quality in the training that we were doing. So we applied for that thin market funding to hopefully get us some more funding. We're currently still waiting for the outcome of the thin market funding that we applied for. I hope I've done you justice in writing a reasonable paper to represent your industry and to represent the training that happens through Sydney TAFE. It was certainly my aim to get an increased funding level to hopefully provide more sustainable training that gave us the opportunity to provide better quality training for the students that are in your area. So we have tried to support the training at Sydney TAFE, and I really wanted to make that point to you this evening that Kirk and I, and to a lesser extent, and I understand the conflict of interest that you're talking about, Trent, and thank you for pointing that out at the beginning. I do appreciate that. But we certainly have tried to fund the training. We've tried to support the training, and but we are in a difficult position where we're trying to walk a very fine line between implementing the policy of the people that employ us and also still servicing the needs of an industry. And like I said, not just your industry, but you know, all of the 60,000 or so students that come to Sydney TAFE. And for me, well, you know, about 6,500 of those students every year.
I guess my concern is perhaps in our industry, and probably the others that you're talking about, is that without TAFE, there is actually no form of official qualification for us.
I agree. Yeah, I very well understand the position that the industry's in, that we are the only provider, and that
in Australia,
in Australia, and certainly in New South Wales and Australia, and really I can only speak for TAFE New South Wales. But and that was part of the concept of why we applied for the thin market funding, while we thought that this was a worthwhile industry for us to be in. So yeah, I do understand your perspective. I don't want you to think that I don't understand that. But again, I still need to, and here's obviously where the conflict of interest comes in. I still need to pay a teacher's salary. Our teachers are exceptionally good teachers. And I'm not just referring to Trent here, although I know Trent is an exceptionally good teacher. But we have exceptionally good staff across many faculty areas. It always encourages me and it surprises me when I go back to look at our staff and when I talk to our staff, and I find out that our staff have got unbelievable industry experience. They've got exceptional industry qualifications. These are people who don't go into teaching because they just think it's something nice to do. They're dedicated, and they're exceptionally qualified, exceptionally good at what they do. They enjoy imparting knowledge to students, and that to me is something that encourages me. I lost my teaching conditions, and as Ross referred to, when I moved into the ivory tower, I no longer teach a class, and I miss it. And I walk around and I see classes being taught, and sometimes I think I'd really like to be back there. But our staff are exceptionally good. We need to be able to support those staff in their current salary conditions. We need to be able to provide facilities. But apart from that, we provide exceptionally good services for our students. And I know some of you have probably been students at Sydney TAFE. We've got exceptionally good support staff that come and help students when they need support. We've got libraries, we've got counsellors, we've got canteens, we've got all those wonderful things that a student would expect when they go to a reputable training organisation. And unfortunately for me, and it is my job, to implement the Smart and Skilled policy, I still have to consider all of those factors. And I have been a businessman, I've run my own business, and I've come from private enterprise back into TAFE. And I understand, and I know that many of you will understand, because you run businesses, you work in industry. I understand the revenue and expenditure model as well as anybody does. And that's the struggle that we're having at the moment. That's the tension that we're finding with this course. Gentlemen at the back.
Just to follow, I guess, from Carl's statement, I guess the fact that I've had several apprentices and I have one currently, enrolled in second year. So basically started the course with the belief that he was going to attain a certain qualification, which would have been had an element of respect, which TAFE courses generally have given. Starting in the second year, of course, now, of course, there's been a substantial reduction in the face-to-face teaching hours, which I would have, if it was a business contract, I would have said that was a breach of one. Basically to both me as a employer, because I'm not going to get an apprentice that's as qualified. It's going to require me to provide him with teaching in-house that's going to allow him to be subsidised in his education. And that on the basis that the political powers are going to say that this is the thing that TAFE has got to do. Seems to be reinforced to me by the fact that a thin market application for funding would say that TAFE also recognises the fact that the teaching that they're providing is underfunded and underprovided for in what would already be an apprentice that started a contract and started a course. How would you respond?
Okay, I'll respond in two ways. Firstly, to say that we have a commitment to complete our students. We have never said that we wouldn't be completing our students, and we will honour that commitment to complete our students. It's not in our business to put students out on the street and say you've started a course, therefore we're no longer going to teach that course, so you're on your own. We wouldn't do that. In the event, and I'm certainly not saying that that's what we're doing, but in the event that any course did discontinue, it would mean that we wouldn't take new enrolments, that we would still honour the enrolments that we have and complete those students. So firstly, have confidence that for you in your particular circumstance, your students will be completed through a course and they will come out with a qualification that I would still like to think carries the amount of respect that it should have within the industry. I can see you getting uncomfortable, and I'm going to jump to my second point, because you think that's a nice management spiel answer. It's the one that I need to give you. Okay. The second point would be, and I'll ask you to try and play with me a bit here, is that if I put 15 students in a class with an exceptionally good teacher, that teacher needs to spread their time over 15 bodies, all with individual questions, all asking individual things. The concept that you're saying is that we're now saying we're going to reduce the hours. The hour reduction is a pro rata reduction based on the number of students that we do have in classes. So if we said there was 15 hours to teach a class and there was 15 students, they would get an hour each. If we have 9 students in a class, they would get an hour each. Therefore, it's 9 hours to teach the class. So that's my response to you, and it's a very simplistic response. But it is the response that I need to give you based on your question, which is the hours have been reduced. And
in response to
normally
that,
you'd like to say.
I've also been a part-time teacher at TAFE, and I also teach courses both here and overseas.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't wash. Because most of your delivery is to a group, not to an individual.
Sure.
So if 80% of your time in delivery of any particular course is actually to the group of students, and you reduce the course total face-to-face times by, in this instance, I think something like a third, then that also gets cut. So you've got to reduce content, not merely time. So if you're reducing content, you're reducing quality, and you're reducing qualification.
Look, got to do.
Look, I'm not.
Yeah,
The reality is, I know that you're the situation you're in, but I look back at the state government's taken upon, as the federal government, is they've basically taken on the university model of trying to maximise their return on investment, basically, which is the basis of the Smart and Skills concept. It's cost recovery. And university courses are producing too many graduates at too low quality is what they're basically ending up with at the moment. The universities are realising that it's a major disaster.
Yeah, that was a result. That was a result of what they called the uncapped places in universities.
Yep.
So you might see that previously to become a teacher you would need a UAI or a TER or whatever they want to call it these days of around 70. Now they're saying they're taking people into different professions, maybe at 50.
Yeah.
So I agree. I've been a strong advocate of TAFE. I was an apprentice once upon a time. Certainly not in watch and clock making, but I was an apprentice. And I went through an apprenticeship. I came to TAFE. I did my qualification, very much like many of you have here. I came back as an adult and studied at TAFE. I understand the value of TAFE. I understand the value of vocational education and training. I'm now in a difficult position where I'm managing vocational education and training. And like I referred to before, I have been a businessman and I do understand business. And I think the point we need to get to, rather than labouring on the point of why are we doing this, because we all know that we've been faced with the scenario of what we have to do.
Yeah.
Where we should be going to now, and where I'd like to divert the discussion to, is how do we, and I'll put myself on the team, I'll put Kirk on the team, I'll put Sydney TAFE on the team. How do we get a product that industry is happy with? How do we best manage this scenario?
Exactly. Just as one follow-up with regard to that, the fundamental issue that TAFE has is it doesn't have enough money to run a course. Yes? That'd be pretty much it.
I would like to just turn that a little bit.
Yeah.
And the fundamental issue that we have is that we don't have enough students in the course.
Yeah. But if you increase the cost for each student to enter the course, but if that was a model that was possible, but also allowed watchmaking students to apply for the TAFE equivalent to HEX, that would, in part at least, allow that model to go forward.
Okay, so a couple of different things that we need to talk about there, and that is that the students are not eligible for the TAFE equivalent of HEX, because that's only eligible for our students at diploma and above, and for selected certificate 4 qualifications. The qualification we're talking about here is a certificate 3, so unfortunately that's not available.
Is there any way of...
I'll just jump on for a minute. The $2,000 fee is all that we're asking the individual to contribute to the qualification. The cost recovery model that you're talking about, it costs us substantially more than the funding that the student gives us to run a qualification, to pay for all those things that we need to pay for. So we can't get them to apply for a loan. We can't, legally now under our contract, I'm not allowed to ask your students to pay any more than $2,000 because that's the contract that every registered training organisation signed up with State Training Services. Can I ask you or anybody else to contribute to the training? No, it's a government set funded qualification. I can't ask anybody to subsidise that qualification. The qualification price is the qualification price. What I would like to do though, and certainly in a much smaller forum, would be to talk about options and to talk about opportunities for us to work together to still create a product that's going to be a quality product, because we are committed to providing a quality product. But what it will mean is that we need to talk to you about how we do it. Ross hoped that he was going to be involved in the conversation. I would like to think that this is the opening of that involvement in the industry being involved with us and talking to us about how we can best deliver relevant, industry recognised quality training for your individuals, for your industry.
I know that at the moment you need minimum 15 students to run the course. But for such a small industry compared to other industry, at the moment I believe you have 8 which have already registered. Don't you think that to have 8 would be much more important than cancelling the whole course? Because at least these 8 students would bring to the future of the industry a future. But if it's cut, if it is totally cut, it will make it very difficult. It is already hard now to get a good watchmaker.
Yeah.
And to get one from overseas. Since I'm in Australia since 35 years, I always had an apprentice, but I have also tried to get watchmakers in from overseas, and that is very difficult. And once you have paid $2,000–3,000 of legal fee just to get them in, then the big companies come and take it away from you.
Sure. So, Trent, forgive me because I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here. Some might think that. Okay, so what I did is I went back and I'm a firm believer that I'm a manager. I'm a firm believer that I, in my position, also have to be a leader. But what I also have with me are a management team and a management structure. So I went back through my assistant directors, back to my managers of my sections, who are the head teachers, and I said exactly what you're talking about. I said, instead of taking no one, let's take these people, okay? But as the manager of the section, and Trent being the industry expert, because believe me, I came from the building industry. I'm in no means, in no way, shape or form, an expert in your industry. I'll never claim to be. But I went to the experts and I said, you need to make me a model that's going to work. So the current model, the current ethic that we've taken of postponing the course is essentially to give us time to create that model. Okay? I can't go in and offer 864 hours worth of training in watch and clock service and repair. Because, again, I'm sorry, Trent, the wages of the teacher that I have to pay is more than what I would get in revenue to cover the cost of that course. So I need a model. I need to develop a model in consultation with my experts on how we can deliver this course. Okay? That's where the consultation's got to come from the industry as well. Okay? So the model that we're implementing, the reduced hours, it's an attempt, certainly from our perspective. Not only have we applied for thin market funding, but to keep the industry going. We're not shutting the program down. We haven't said that we're going to shut the program down. What we're looking for is viable, sustainable options for us to keep the program open. And I gave you the commitment before that I'm on the team. So that's what I'm working for.
Could you just qualify thin market funding? How much, what sort of, is it 5% or 50%?
Yeah, interesting question. They're telling us that it could be up to 15%. Okay, so 15% of 8 people. It gives me slightly more than one person.
One body and half an arm.
So unfortunately, I don't think even the thin market funding is going to be our saviour. But at the moment, we have no response on the thin market funding applications we put in.
I also ask, where we're at, is the locksmithing and jewellery industry, we sort of on par with them, so all of us are more or less in those three, roughly the same way.
In some ways, yes. I'm presuming and I'm guessing you're talking about in numbers?
Yes.
No, very much no. No. We have, and Trent would be able to tell you the exact numbers probably better than I could, but we do have substantially more numbers in locksmithing, but not to the extent that we do have in jewellery. Jewellery isn't as big as locksmithing, but both of those industries have actually got classes that have commenced, and they are actually running under a sustainable, viable business model.
I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate the offer in the sense of actually sitting down and trying to work out the model. But in order to do that, who's going? Does that initiative has to come from the industry? So basically, we, the industry body, as we are, we basically have to officially approach you. Is this how it's going to work?
I'd like to think that we'd be able to form a working group.
Okay.
Okay. Again, lots of groups are formed and not much action happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But you know, and that would be something that internally your organisation would have to look at and structure. It's not going to take much to make an approach to me.
Yeah.
It's only a phone call or an email. And I'm more than happy to sit down and talk with Mark Wilson, who's our head teacher, to bring him into a meeting, to bring Kirk into a meeting, and to bring any interested people in that feel that they can have an input into this. Certainly, I think you do have some qualified and experienced people within your organisation that might be able to come and work with us. You know, I can see some faces around the back that might be some of our past or present students, and maybe they'd be keen on being involved as well. So a broad range of representation from your industry in a not too big group, because I think the smaller the group, often the more action that happens. And come and sit down and talk to us. And like I said, then I can actually start presenting to you some things in that smaller group that you know, I have to be very politically careful about what I say in an open forum. But some options that I think might be viable options for you to think about and to consider and to take away, and some options that I think might be able to help the viability of the programs that we're talking about.
Just a quick message, a question from somebody just watching us on the web from the North Coast. They've asked would TAFE support a privatised board to run through TAFE using the TAFE premises.
Certainly.
So it would be possible.
So that would be what we would class as a commercial program.
Yeah.
And if we had an approach from any industry body to come and say we have a certain amount of people that would like to run a program, and if we have the capability to run that program, we'd certainly be happy to look at a financial costing for you to do that program.
So that'd be a fee to use basically for the premises and
a fee for service.
Yeah. Fee for service.
Yeah. Again, there's different models there. I mean, we're happy to talk to industry about them running training in our facilities.
Yeah.
We're also happy to talk about And obviously our preferred model would be that we would run training within our facility.
Just another quick question too that someone's just asked from Queensland. Is there an avenue for industry or benefactors to donate funding to the TAFE in a way by which it would continue the operation of the course?
Okay, so funding donations essentially in the past have been in the form of equipment, materials. I can't ask you to fund my staff. I can't ask you to pay for my staff. My staff are my obligation. I have over 300 staff and I need to pay for them every fortnight. Unfortunately, I can't ask you to do that in any other way except by offering you a fee-for-service program for us to deliver. That, by a flow-through model, helps me pay for my staff, sure. But again, I'm very well aware of the conflict of interest that exists with my teacher sitting in the room. And again, not to be unkind to Trent, but I'd obviously talk about those options without Trent here, because I don't want him caught in the conflict of interest.
Ross? I'll just ask, I mean, it seems to me that you're saying that preparedness to negotiate, but are we talking about only the sort of compromises we're prepared to make that won't change, in fact, any of the funding that comes through the sort of duration of the program that's going to be delivered?
Okay, so I had the opportunity to read the information that was on the back of the letter there. I would like to think that the negotiation, the discussions that we would have would be successful. I'd like to think they came up with a model that met your needs and that met my needs. Okay.
But I'm still going to ask the question again, does that mean we have to compromise or you're going to change your position somehow?
If you can work out a way for me to change my position, Ross, I'm happy to talk to you about it. My position is quite fixed. I am in a position where I've been given a list of courses over many different industry areas that has a fee attached to it, a price, and I need to deliver my programs within that cost structure. So I'm not quite sure what negotiation or what you're asking me to do, but again, I'm happy to talk to a small group, a working party about
what are the grounds for negotiation?
I want to work with you.
So if we were to speak to somebody that would allow your position to be more flexible, who would we speak to? I think Ross is trying to ask that question.
Would you like me to start at the top?
Well,
around 2,000 music? No, sorry.
But as a direct person to target, who would you recommend that we would target?
I can't make you a recommendation.
Who would you maybe suggest?
You must consider my position here, please. I am a public servant, first and foremost.
Yeah, I understand that.
I will not bite the hand that feeds me.
That's fine. I understand.
Thank you.
Most of what you've said on the funding side of things illustrates the width of the gap between what's possible and where we are now.
Sure.
And from what you said about the way TAFE is an overall amount of funding, which has got a spread equity amongst the trades concerned. The only way that we could possibly gain, of course, is by more money coming into TAFE, the spread equity. From what you said, I don't think you can favour one trade against another.
Okay. Comment. Okay, I have 1,362 apprentices doing the Civic 3 and electrotechnology electrician. They are paying, their qualification price is $13,180 per student. They bring me in a significant proportion of my revenue. Am I going to favour them over my 8 apprentices in Civic 3 watch and clock service and repair? I'm not quite sure that you're putting me in an even position to answer.
Well, let's see if I can modify it.
He's our treasurer, by the way.
Can I give you a moment to think about it? Someone
Don't
else
take
had a
him on.
question.
I've seen a model overseas where courses are basically combined with, say, teaching basic hand skills, and then as they get partway through, they split off into the individual courses.
Yep.
Courses as distinct from watchmaking to surgical instrument making coming out of the one group. Is there any way that, say, the 3 groups, so I'm just trying to think of something that might be equal, the locksmithing, the jewelry and the watchmaking in, say, basic hand skills,
Okay, so
trade science?
excellent point. I'll introduce you to Kirk. Kirk's our assistant director, and I'm not sure that Kirk actually realised a few months ago when I grabbed him and said, "Hey mate, do you want to come and work for me?" I'm not quite sure he realised what I was actually asking him to do. Kirk is also very new, but what I can tell you about Kirk is he has excellent industry knowledge and excellent industry qualifications. He is from your faculty. I'm not. He knows a lot about your courses, and he's what I would class as an expert in your areas, and particularly with the MSA training package. I might hand over to Kirk so he can give you a response on that one.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Appreciate it. Whilst Richard's saying I'm an expert on your area, I'm not a clockmaker, I'm a toolmaker. Okay? So I hold 2 qualifications, being machining and toolmaking. So I did the old school method, which Ross will probably remember back in those days.
You don't have to reflect on my age.
Sorry. So, my background is being machining and toolmaking, so I know that training package, MEM training package, your qualification comes out quite well. I've done quite a lot of manipulation in the training package to get qualifications up and running. The particular watch and clock, I haven't had a great deal of time to deal with it. I only met Trent this year, officially, about a week ago, we sat down and had a conversation. Okay, so that's where that is, right? So I'll put that there. To answer your question, we do that. So video machining and toolmaking are one teaching section. Both 2 different trade qualifications, but first 2 years of that qualification are pretty much identical. So we run stage 1, stage 2 together. Stage 2, we sort of start to tear away a little bit because we now go to teach the toolmakers more precise methods of actually machining. Okay? Stage 3 is where it falls apart. You can't put a toolmaker and a fitter together, they're just totally different expertise areas. Okay? So yes, we can do that.
One downside to that, I would see that by the numbers we're talking about, it would probably cost us teachers who wouldn't be needed for that part of the course, unless you had large enough numbers.
So that's where you save.
Yeah, then you say
That's basically you've got to manage your teachers into those key areas and their expertise to enter those expert components. So toolmaking, which is saying we've got 8 students there, we'll go on the whole, watch and clock. How many toolmakers do you think we have?
Toolmaker.
Probably about 8.
Really?
Really not many.
Jeez.
We have 14 watch and clock makers, by the way.
Oh, well, when you go total, now we probably start talking about 25 toolmakers.
There you go.
So stage 1, toolmakers, we're probably looking at about 8.
If you combine those courses, would you be getting more money?
No, what we end up with is what you might find on an aeroplane, which is some students might be sitting in the front of the plane. Some students bought their ticket last week, so they might have paid more or less. Some students bought their ticket 3 months ago, so they might have paid more or less. Essentially what we end up with is a classroom that still takes people from A to B, but they all pay a different amount. That's the structure of Smart and Skilled.
But they don't drop you off over the Atlantic.
No. Some other things we've implemented in toolmaking sections are increasing theory class sizes. So traditional size of a class was 15, so we're looking at maybe 16 in practical classes, but we're running 32 in the theory class now. So we teach them the theory and we break them off into separate groups to do their practical side. So there are some savings that are coming out of it. It's a bit of a management nightmare, but we're working around it. So traditional number sizes are changing.
I wouldn't like to think that I'd be inviting you to a meeting where I could turn around and say, we've tried it, we've tried it, we've tried it, we've tried it, because I'm never going to claim to know everything. But when you ask us, can you try this? Probably the answer is going to be, yes, we did, and this was the outcome. So we're doing this constantly. The last 3 months of my life have been an absolute pleasure to live. We've been trying to combine courses. We've been trying to teach like units across different courses of study. We've been trying to look at options for delivery of theory compared to options for delivery of practical. We've been trying to combine programs with other institutes, talking to other colleges. You might have 6 or 8, we might have 6 or 8. If we taught them together and we got half the money each, wouldn't that be a better outcome? So we're trying a broad range of options to try and make courses work. What I'm interested in really is what you can bring to the table. What options can you tell me that I haven't thought of?
I wonder if we should just move forward with the forum part. It's probably not going to change very much what's said in the turn of events. But I wonder if we could just sort of invite people to to ask questions and try and keep the questions not too much Dorothy Dix. I wonder if I could start by asking one of you blokes. If say we accept that there's no more money that's going to come in to provide additional teaching hours, is there any resources available? Because when you're in a one teacher section, I can talk from some experience here, it's really hard to develop the resources. And Carl Parker and I spent a lot of time developing resources. Carl helped me on that. But if say we look at it and say, oh well, look, if we had a really great, open learning type package where the students could do a lot of theory online, is there funds available for that sort of course development work?
I'd love to be able to say yes, there's funds out there for doing lots of things. The particular point you're asking me about, there is some opportunity for us to do that, but in a funding environment where the funding for just about every course we run was not what we hoped it might have been, funds are tight.
So at the moment, if Trent hasn't got a full program, there's unspent money being wasted. And that can his time be diverted to that sort of activity? Or are we going to say, well, straight away, look, funding for his salary runs out at the end of August, off he goes?
Yeah, and we have, through the head teacher, we have entered into those discussions already. You know, is it possible for us to get some of these programs delivered via an online platform? Is it possible for us to have different methods of delivery? And they are options that we're looking at. You're right, if we have a teacher under program, couldn't that teacher be doing that? Sure. I just don't think I'll find much extra funding for it.
Is there any scope for, and our problem is there to get enough, if we could get, make our numbers up through people who are not apprentices, is there any scope there?
It's funny when you've got someone who works for you and he looks at you and you look at him, and I bet you he's thinking, no, go on, you answer this one. Look, sure. If there are people who want to do the course, that's fine. We can mix groups. Like we said, we can have an aeroplane that's got people that pay first class. We've got an aeroplane that people that pay economy. We've got people that buy their ticket late and people that buy their ticket early. We don't mind really where people buy their ticket, but we'd just like more people to be buying tickets. If that was the case, the next question you're going to ask me is how much will it cost?
Well, that's obviously a follow-on, but it's really the starting point I was thinking of.
Yeah, so sure. I mean, I would probably get you to the point very quickly where I could say, if you're going to give me an individual who wants to do the course, then I would very quickly try and align that individual to the Smart and Skilled funding, purely because the majority of my job is not about me, it's not about Kirk, it's not about Trent. The majority of my job is for the students. And if I've got 6,500 students, I'm trying to get them the best deal for them. And the best deal for this course for the student is to be an apprentice. And I would say, go to your industry and see if you can find an apprenticeship. Because if you can find an apprenticeship, it's an extra number that I get as an apprentice. And it means for the individual, they will only pay $2,000, not substantially more. And I won't scare you with what that price may be.
Well, I think we need to know that, because I think Noel and I have got in mind the sort of people, we get approaches all the time from people that are close to retiring age, that have been tool makers, or they've been fitters, or they've been something. And, some of them have really successfully converted over to our trade, some in their 30s and 40s. And they're operating businesses all around the place. So, I mean, if it is somebody like that, then what is the sort of thing that people do?
What I'd like to say is that I could work a fee out for you, but I would hazard a guess that it would, for the certificate 3, it would probably be somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. I'm sorry, that's a broad range of.
For the 3 years of qualification.
For the qualification.
Well, say $5,000 a year on application, really.
Okay, so it's an interesting point. You shrugged your shoulders and said $5,000 a year for a qualification. I'm only looking at charging students $660 or so per year for the qualification. That gives you an idea of the level of subsidy that the course is getting.
See, if I may just say something, I think what I sort of, with the whole policy, where I get lost is that basically they come up with this scheme, right? And that's what we're going to do. But I think if they were to come actually and approach the public and saying, look, this is what it cost us, and we really have to charge more money for it, okay? And implement that, well, look, that course costs not that much, which I think we can't have everything for nothing. I mean, look, we have to stop in giving people everything for nothing. I mean, I'm the first one to say that, okay? However, I think there's a way to go about it, and this is what's happened, I think, in the last few years, that they just make up a mind, they say that, but nothing is really communicated properly.
Okay, you're a brave man, and I'd love to congratulate you. Thank you. Unfortunately, folks, what I deal with most of the time is people complaining about the fact that their fee has gone up $50 or $100 a year. You could imagine the public uproar if I asked individuals to pay not $2,000 for a course, but what it really cost me. We would literally, we would have riots in the streets.
It's not costing you personally, it's costing all of us.
Yeah.
And what I fail to understand is how could we afford to do it for the last 70 years?
Exactly. Instead
But all of
of,
a sudden we can't afford to do it at all.
because they haven't really, look, every business, you talk about business, right? You have to increase prices because the costs going up. And I think this is what it really has gone wrong in the whole politicians, like, it doesn't matter what side, okay?
Sure.
They, all of a sudden, they come up with these ideas and realizing, this isn't funny. Oh, we can't do it anymore. But they would have actually kept it like a business and say, look, it goes up every year. Implement, instead of, okay, this year it's $200, next year it's $240. And if you do this over years, you increase it, hence the shock is not as bad. I mean, I understand entirely where you come from and what position you are, okay? I completely understand it. And unfortunately, all in here, as we are, we really now, we are basically confronted with a policy which we had no input, which is basically saying, well, this is it now. And I think, and I go back to what Ross said, eventually that's something we have to, politicians probably will have to, the only way to give our opinion about it will be on the day of elections in the end. Because I think, look, my opinion is that we all really want the same.
We do.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? When we're all talking around it, but I think we all have the same in the heart and want to make it work. And it's my last thing to say. And I think I want to be in a group and approach you and talk about it. Purely only to see really in the end
what can we do.
What we do.
Yeah.
Graham Baker wants to say something.
Sure.
Yeah, look, I'll just give a bit of a perspective from the Victoria, what's recently happened in Victoria. As you know, we had elections just before Christmas, and the Liberals were expected to get back in. Labor basically had three platforms. One was to stop building a tunnel, an east-west link, which was going to cost between 11 billion and 1,800 billion. No one really knew how much it would be. They had ideas that they would run a rail link to the airport, but that wouldn't be ready till 2026 or something.
Yeah.
So, we had these sort of pie in the sky, very expensive projects. Labor came out and did a couple of very simple things. They said, we'll do metro rail, we'll separate the rail links where the railway lines, where the cars cross, get rid of all the boom gates. The third was, we will refund TAFE. Now, I believe that TAFE, refunding TAFE, had a really big impact on the election. Now, I do know that I come from Bendigo. Straight away, the government there gave $350,000 to stop redundancies because, like everywhere, there were redundancies. They were not getting enough money. They have a very, very strong commitment to refunding TAFE, and I personally do believe they will. Our local member, whose name is Jacinta Allen, she formerly was the Education Minister, and I have been to meetings where she has made commitments to TAFE. She's now our Minister for Roads, so she is extremely busy. I've put in to talk to her to see if she's able to assist. But look, it doesn't matter who you're going to vote for in the election, go and talk to both sides and get a commitment for TAFE, because so much money has been wasted on private training providers. Someone mentioned your local ABC here before. In Melbourne, John Fain does the same job. He's been talking about all the rorts that have gone on by private providers, training providers. This is where I think the commitment, getting funds back to TAFE really comes from. TAFE has the runs on the board. Every one of us here went to TAFE. We can look back and say, we wouldn't have had our careers without TAFE. So I can only say to you, go along, talk to your local MPs, find out if they're prepared to commit money to TAFE. I think that is the answer. More money. Ross just said 70 years they've been able to fund TAFE. Now all we're getting is cuts and going to private training providers. It's not working, and we need that money to go back to TAFE. Thank you.
No comment.
I'm sure I would like more money.
Anything else from the floor? Anybody else want to say?
One thing.
Gentleman here just asked a question. I'd like to think not. Okay, certainly that's not my impression. I think we provide an excellent service to the people of New South Wales.
It's not being funded to do it.
We are being funded to do it. What we need to think about is, you say, are we broken? No. I agree very much. I agree with your comments, Graham. I don't think it matters which side of the political fence you like to bargain on, but there is an ethic within different parts of politics, and that will be displayed at different points along the road. I'm hoping that the ethic that we've seen, certainly in Victoria, we saw the slashing of TAFEs. We saw TAFEs being overtaken weekly by universities. We saw TAFEs being merged from 3, 4, 5 campuses down to 1. University of Ballarat has now taken over some of the TAFEs. Federation University, they're called now. So we're far from that. Was TAFE broken in Victoria? I would say yes. Is TAFE broken in New South Wales? No. We're in a very different environment. We have a very different minister. We have a government that is supportive of TAFE. I don't think we're anywhere near broken. I'm hoping the ethic, the fundamentals of what people believe about TAFE, what they believe about vocational education and training broadly, in the future may come back to being more supportive, and I'm going to be there. There's no way I'm going out of business. I've got too many. I've got, like I said, 6,500 students. I've got over 300 staff. Those people can't be out of a job, and they're not going to go out of a job under my watch.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm just conscious of the time.
Sure.
And I think these fellows have done a terrific job. I don't envy them. I've been there a couple of times. And I think that probably, if there's no pressing matters, I know Noel was itching, but there's something that, what I'm going to propose is that we might knock off for 10 minutes, have a cup of coffee, cake, and let the boys toddle off home, and we might talk about what we see as our options, and that might be something we come back and we take up with you.
Sure.
About what we think might be the options. I mean, it seems to me, it's not elastic money, and it's only going to pay us for so far. So I mean, if if we even get the thin funding model, I don't think it's going to buy us that much more than we've got now. So we've got to really think hard about what our options are. I think probably don't need to waste your time while we're deliberating over that. But look, I would really like to thank, I know for TAFE people, you don't get paid overtime for coming here tonight, do you?
I wish we did.
Anyway, I'd like to thank Richard and Kirk, and I'll see Kirk under better circumstances soon, I guess it's dinner somewhere. But, but it was great of them to come along and give their time tonight. And I think we all sort of have an appreciation of the situation there, and it was good that they could come along.
Thank you.
Summary served, ladies and gentlemen.
Does anybody that hasn't got a lucky draw ticket? They're not allowed to get these out the internet, Andrew.
Keep your gear on.
Sorry,
What's that? One day.
The one you gave me, I thought it was initially 10.5. So we've got one. Good to see you. It's been a while. I understand it. But what it comes into, and that's where I think what it really comes into. You have to use different products, and you get this side of it, now that is not going to work. Because
it's inside the end of what's happening. So you don't want to see that.
I took over, you know the watch, right? You can't charge more. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know who does that.
I have to charge more. If I don't charge more, I'm a business. I sit down.
Sorry, mate. There, just in the corner, there's I don't know if anyone of you, actually this is not, that's up to you. Bread and wire, there's a few bits and pieces left of Bread and Wire's estate in the corner. Everything that's sitting on that table is $10 each. Basically, we're just trying to clear up some of that stuff out of this estate. So if you want to, there's a bag in the corner, just drop the money straight in the bag.
Okay? Because we're going to build that tunnel and we got 2015, 2020 to 2025. This is stupid. And they said it is funded. Of course they're right. When I found it too, because they know exactly it's not going to happen. And if it's going to happen, it will be put it down to something which is completely useless.
Yeah, you're right.
Is going through a bit of it's not anymore because he goes in there at the club runs this, okay, because they give the money. This is fun, right? So a good guy, let's be honest. The reason Phil didn't get it because he's good. I'm sorry to say that. Because he said yes. You know what? You like money. Once you say, for instance, you have now access $10 and there's 10 groups. Don't believe it. You understand? Now, the same thing is, once you don't believe, so what will happen is that will, for someone in the future will be happening.
Might get you all to sit down. Bring your cup of tea and get yourself another piece of cake. Very nice cocktails tonight. Great to go. I'm sitting on the road.
And you also have one of yourself through. And we could be that Lindsay. This game is nice.
I should probably move it around. You're on air now.
Hello, how are you? Evening, colleagues. So, Roger, tell me about the watchmaking future that exists now. I know you're only your head that's on top. Top of our heads are actually in the future. I think the TAFE system's broken.
Yeah, I think it's broken. It's done well.
All right, tonight we're going to draw the lucky door prize. I only had 2 people leave. And if they win, I'll have to. Everyone hear a funny story? Okay. Did you hear about the WCA president that picked up the Swatch Group customer service manager in King's Cross, drove all the way through every tunnel, harbour tunnel?
Do you normally dig up people at King's Cross?
What is it called, that other tunnel, M2 tunnel? Got onto Epping Road and lost the clutch.
Oh, no.
Can you believe that? And I also had the president of the Victorian branch. Did we get late for the meeting? Did we panic?
Yep.
Did we sweat? No. Fortunately, that's true. We've had some fun, haven't we? Anyway, I thought it was a good fun story, but we still made it like time for dinner, but thanks to my family. Anyway, I wanted to thank you all for your patience there tonight. I think tonight is all about engaging people, and I think that certainly happened. I'm not agitating them too much, but I could sense there was maybe a little bit of agitation. But anyway, we will have a go at trying to get a consensus of where we should go from here in a moment. I thought I'd just change the mood a little bit, as presidents can do that. We're going to talk a little bit about some watchmaking here in Australia, because I think it's important we do hear a little bit of what's happening in the world of watches. Do you want to do the raffle right now? Sorry, the lucky door?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We'll ask Kerry to pull out her ticket. And tonight you have. Okay, it's a late one. Oh no, it's an early one. Black ticket, PO9. John Buckingham, come on down.
John, they're a bit like bricks. Put them in your driveways.
That's right. B11. Who's got it? B11. That's what you always wanted. That's why there was 2, per ticket and the one you bought.
I think it was B1.
Anyway, just a quick update. I think we had over 20 people online watching by streaming from possibly New Zealand, Victoria, Queensland. So if you look at that, we probably had close to 50 people in the room tonight, so that's great. Now, back to my talk. I want to quickly give you a bit of an update and ask you a few questions about what's happening in our world of watchmaking in Australia, because I think we never stop learning, and I think this one will be interesting to see how many of you do know how to pronounce this first company. Has anybody heard?
I
Sorry,
was
it's not
there.
big enough.
I was there.
It's after 6 beers, it's Basel, isn't it?
That's after dessert. That's after third beer.
Anyway, it's a very small print, and I don't expect you to be able to read it, but it could be Bousselet.
No, Brazil.
Brazil?
Brazil, yeah.
Has anybody heard of it? Hands up if you've heard of it.
Depends what language you
One, two, okay, three, John. It's great to see John Evelyn's here too. There's a bit late for my welcome, but anyway, John, we gave you apologies, but now you're here, we apologise even more. No, we don't. So this company is now boasting that they are the first company to be ever invited to go to Baselworld. So this year, I'll be displaying the watch that has a little bit of Australia. And have a look out for them because they have crowns that have all of the sands of, I don't know which beach it is, but somewhere in Queensland, and you can have coal, coral, and you can have iron ore. And I'm not sure how that goes for magnetism, but anyway, you can carry a little bit of Australia with you wherever you go. But just so you know what Basuli stands for, are you ready for this? The B stands for beyond. And the AUS is, of course, from Australia, and ELE is elements. So there you know. I've learned what Basuli watches are all about. I'm not sure of the price range. I think they're gone up market. They say they're the only luxury watch company made in Australia. All their movements are made in, well, cases are made in Switzerland, but SOPROD are the movements that you'll find inside these movements. I just need to turn the page.
Sorry, what's in it, Trent? Moves?
SOPROD.
SOPROD.
Anybody see the SOPROD movement?
No. Country of origin of the SOPROD movement?
It's quite appropriate tonight to have, obviously, the Victorian president from Melbourne, but also Olivia. How many of you have heard of the Melbourne Watch Company? Haven't seen any quality watches from them yet? Shaking your head. Anyway, this is a company that started in about 2012 or 2013, and they're doing really gunbusters, building watches for people who go on Kickstarter and crowdfunding, and then they build a production run. They needed 35 and they got over $100,000. So they added, upgraded a lot of their hands and sapphire crystals and anti-reflective glasses. So anyway, they brought out their Flinders watches, the first one. These are mechanical watches and they're using Miyota automatic movements. And Miyota have released the 9105, which is to rival the 2892. Does anybody tell me they've serviced the Miyota 9105 yet?
We can't.
What was that? No? Okay. Look, I think it's interesting to see how people are marketing their watches and developing them and getting funding for them. Now, these are just normal people like you and me, and maybe some of us in the room might get an idea. So I thought I would try and now share with you the latest development. Now, this development came by a LinkedIn friend of mine. I looked at that. Obviously, he wanted to be the teacher of watchmaking. And he's saying, listen, Trent, this is what I'm doing. Can you please tell the world? So I said, yes, sure. Here it is.
Trent, can you possibly tell us the address for this YouTube link you're about to throw up?
I can do all
So
that.
the one thing we can't see is that we can't see on YouTube the
Anyway,
link.
I've got a little video to show you. I just wanted to introduce you to the Warrior watch from Australia. It's called the Jozaki. Anybody heard of it? Okay. If all the sound systems work, let's have all that red light. Not sure about that red light.
Plastic blue one, now the copper's right down, mate.
Hardly any good help these days.
Surf backwards, that's cool.
That's quite a little bit disappointing.
Never works for me.
I can do this, I know it.
Yeah, that's right.
I've had a hard day, I'm proud. I told my wife I'm a broken car. Anyway.
Broke her car.
Alright, here we go. So, you ready now? Can we turn the lights down? Now, mate.
Guess what else? Your car's broken.
Hold it again, do it again.
Yeah.
You can wash up on it, don't buy one.
For me, when I put the eyepiece on, it's like stepping into another world. The intricacies of a watch has always fascinated me. That's why I'm still in the business. It's always been my dream to see my own design come to life. I've been working on watches for 25 years, and now everything I've learned, I've put into this watch. I'm Dean Lucas, and this is a Warrior.
The Warrior is as comfortable in the mountain and the sea as it is at the bar and at work. Just think, how many times have you had to replace your watch? Jazaki watches simply won't settle for that rate of failure. There is officially a new standard of watch on the market at an affordable price. What's most impressive about the Warrior though is what's under the hood. Engineered 50mm stainless steel casing, 2mm thick sapphire crystal face, the dual sealing system, heavy duty spring bars, Teflon seals, top loaded construction, and of course, the unique band fitting system. Dean is collaborating with Carbon Nexus, a $34 million state-of-the-art research and analysis lab. This research is leading to even further innovation in part designed for Warrior, specifically in developing case and band components. Wearing this watch, you'll know and feel that it's the result of extreme care and detail. Choose to wear the flexible silicone band for the weekends or a more refined alternative for the weekdays. And to change, it's as easy as this.
But it's not in the showroom the Warrior belongs.
Dean Lucas, the man behind Jazaki, is a qualified watchmaker whose industry career comes from over 20 years working with Tag Heuer, Zenith, Eagle, Louis Vuitton, and Dior. He gets what men want in a watch. He gets what men need from a watch.
This is the reason I've devoted 3 years in designing a Warrior. I've handpicked suppliers and set extraordinary manufacturing standards. I'm talking zero compromise. In my hands is a full working prototype of the Warrior. The next step is to raise funds to manufacture 500 units, and that's where you come in. Partner with me and bring your wife a watch like no other.
So there you go. I'm not getting paid for this advertisement, but I just thought it was a very interesting development. We have a lot of young people in the room. I know that we all love digital watches, but hands up if you think it's hot.
I think it's hot.
And hands up if you think it's not.
Only do men.
It's not going to work? I think it's
The market.
Okay, who's sitting on the fence? Is Noel sitting on the fence?
No, I reckon.
Is your fence broken?
Yeah, I think it's a polarizing one, definitely. I think, yeah. Why would you make it digital? My first thing to say was, is there a mechanical model coming out? He's assured me that there is, but anyway, you can go on to what's called this website.
Chunky.com.
Sorry?
Chunky.com.
No. It's where you go on and you get crowdfunding, but it's called something else. I forgot what it is. Anyway, and you can support the production of the watch. I think at the moment he needs at least $35,000 or $50,000, and he's got about 6,000. I think he's getting desperate, and he had to try and find more people to promote it. But it's the same way that this Melbourne watch has started, and now they're becoming so popular and trendy, and you've got people writing reviews on YouTube. You know, it'll be interesting to watch the progress of a digital watch. With all his marketing, I'm not quite sure why he's doing that. But obviously it's a solid case, and it's all sealed through. Fun. But anyway, we've all heard the beginnings of a brand name and how long will it last. Will you go one? Yeah, I haven't got that ready to go.
If they really get on trend, it's the knockoffs themselves.
Yeah. I love it how it's a real watchmaker's watch. He's really thought it through. Anyway. I think about 300, maybe 395. Anyway, we also like to have 1 minute wonders here at our meeting. We normally start with 1 minute wonders. And we have had a whole new year of exciting things that may have happened in your part of the world. Anybody like to share something that they've come across their bench, or exciting thing happened in your family, personal life that you want to share? No? Okay, we'll go with John and Andrew.
It's not anything exciting or whatever. I happened to be in England last year and went up to Greenwich. They just happened to have a display on for a short period of time called Ships, Clocks and Stars, the Quest for Longitude. And it was on, and they were opening late at the night while I was there. I bought a big book and a little bit that was written by our friend Jonathan Betts. And I went back for the lecture that night, and they had a fellow called Tony Dobson speaking, and they had all of Harrison's clocks on display, and quite an interesting talk, and I was able to get involved with that, being the only other type person. And it just was by sheer fluke. We were booked to go to England years ago, or a year earlier, and just chose that particular day to go up there, and it was only on for 3 weeks, and I was there. So, yeah, it was good.
Thank you. Andrew?
Until the Oakleys directs, I can't help myself. Yeah. We've found since pretty much since Christmas 4 new Oakleys which we've unearthed, which is quite fantastic. So we're quite excited by that discovery. But we've this is we being Trent and myself. We've unearthed them in Germany, America, and the United States. So it's been quite a nice little roller coaster ride. A little bit of bait that we've sent out that's given us a really interesting return. So yeah, been a bit of fun.
These are James and the Tamworth.
Yeah. So before he enters the country, we've also landed, of course, the a long case clock here, which sort of arrived under its own steam 200 years after he arrived. So that was also not different. But,
yeah, there's another good story there. Thanks, Andrew. Michael, did you have some news?
No.
Well, congratulations. The Smith clan is now just getting so big, isn't it? You'll need a new, bigger house.
How many Smiths does that make then?
Yes. Right.
Yes, those that attended the national meeting, Trent gave a long talk on handling watch cases. He mentioned to me at the time that he thought there was a watch case manufacturer in Bendigo, and I had a watchmaker, retired watchmaker, come into the shop, and he used to work next door to where my shop is, in the jewellers, called Prescott and Dorr. Now, he was telling me that Mr. Dorr did indeed make watch cases in Bendigo, and it was called the Australian Swiss Manufacturers. Now, I haven't found much information. He did appear at a Tariff Protection Board meeting with Handley. The cases were manufactured from somewhere like that. It was in 1931 or 34 in some dispute right through to 1961. So they must have been reasonable. So I'm assuming there may be cages out there with ASM on them. It's a fairly unusual name. Yeah. I would guess Australian Swiss manufacturer ASM. So that's probably the link, and I'm sure Trent will follow that up. Just a funny little thing that happened to me on the plane. I was sitting on the plane. There's a couple of Africans sitting next to me, and one was from Sudan and one was from Uganda. And the guy from Sudan was in America, and he's just out here on a holiday. The woman's out at university doing a course. I get talking to him, and I said to him, "What do you do in America?" He said, "I'm a nuclear scientist." And I thought, there's not many times you actually meet a nuclear scientist. We all say we're going to be one or whatever. But the other thing was, this woman, it turns out, she went to the MCG on Sunday to watch the India-South Africa cricket game, and I was there as well. And it was the most memorable day of cricket. I'm not the biggest cricket fan, but the enthusiasm of the Indians at that ground was unbelievable. And on the big screen it came up, Sachin Tendulkar was sitting there talking to the ICC president. His photo went up on the big screen. The whole 86,000 people just went up. They're bowing to him straight. And he was in a box just around the corner, and one of the corporate boxes. And all we could see from where we were sitting here is about 50 metres away, I suppose. Every now and then a hand would come out. Sachin! They're like, seriously, they're like, oh, you've got to see it. But it was certainly a really memorable day. I heard the ABC cricket commentator say here it was one of the most memorable days of cricket we've seen, all because of the Indian. Out of 86,000 people, I would estimate there were 75,000 people. A sea of blue. And every time they hit the ball, they'd all go up. The drums would be belted, the whistles would blow. It was just a fabulous thing.
Thank you, Graham.
That's my story.
Olivia, did you want to say anything to our members about what's happening? I know you had lots of questions about what your workshops got and all that, but did you want to just spend a minute just telling us a little update on how you train?
Yeah, maybe just to continue on the training. We just got one petition coming back to your course in Miami for the step that we should probably go and coach making school. So yeah, she just came back from Miami a month ago. We are working with Hong Kong on a new 1-year step program where we focus only on the practice side of the 2-year course, and the student can later on do the second year if needed. We're working on other training options. We have a 6-week movement exchange training, which is now available in Hong Kong. So that's also another option. So yeah, we have in-house training options. It costs a lot to send these invitations overseas. I was just sharing this with that guest earlier tonight.
Yeah. And you've got 20 benches at the moment that are...
Yes, so the team is, we have a team of 26 watchmakers and technicians. So the whole customer service department is now 55 people. So the workshop is based in Melbourne. We have a smaller team in Sydney for the Omega 6, we have a team of 6. But in Melbourne, yes, the technical team is around 20. So we have counter support, diagnostics technician, case preparation, technician.
Well, thank you again for your participation and travel to our meeting tonight. We really appreciate the support of the Swatch Group. And Graham also, please pass on our regards to your executive. Thank you for making the effort. John Ablins, would you like to give us an update on what's happening with Jewelry World?
What's happening with Jewelry World? It's interesting to come here tonight, see the trade put together with TAFE. I think TAFE is willing to work with you, but I thought Richard had he's on your side.
But what do you see the future for watchmaking? Cool.
That's a great question. I'm not prepared to make any comments about training. Sorry.
Okay, so that's still in discussion, but no, if you have anything to report, yeah, we'll do it in the magazine anytime. I am looking for someone to write some watch articles for a magazine. I like to reinstate the timepiece articles we used to do in Jewelry World. So there are some budding journalists that can maybe bring us up to date on some new developments in the watch trade or what the trade should know about watches. Just informative. We're an information magazine, and I like to put some more emphasis back on watches in the magazine. We're not just a jewelry magazine.
Okay. Thanks, John. Should let Gary have a go. Gary, did you want to give us an update on what's happening at Seiko?
Well, yeah, I guess it is a trouble with watchmakers. We've got juries and that. We've got the jewel friends that have gone come out in front. The other thing we're looking towards is setting up an actual repair area within our workshop for the Astron watches.
Pretty cool.
At the moment, they go back to Japan to the service, but we're looking up to set that up, so that'll happen sometime this year, with especially some of the guys getting trained and all the apparatuses we'll need for the Astron watches in themselves, the GPS stuff and that. So that's all in the pipeline, and we're actually acquiring the equipment at the moment. So probably one of Richard's little babies must be listening.
I bought mine on the basis it wouldn't stop.
You've got 100,000 years. So I'll see you then, right?
I'll pay you back.
They can afford to buy lunch at that point.
Anyway, I just wanted to thank you all again for your participation in tonight's meeting. It's not finished, but I'm going to just ask Ross to take over again and go with the deliberations. I'm purposely not making any comments because I am a public servant. And if I say something, I might regret it. So I'm not going to do that. I'll fall into that trap. Look, I'm very confident the trade of watchmaking is very strong and has a great future. I can make that clear. And yeah, I'm still very passionate about teaching.
Can I give you a 1 minute one or several?
Yeah, sure.
He doesn't do 1 minute.
No.
Make sure you sign on sheet. We need.
I don't do perfect well.
You ready? You ready?
Ready, set, go.
I want 2 seconds.
I just recently had a beautiful striking carriage clock, Jacko, I think it was, that came in, and it was repaired in 2013 by someone in England. Took it apart, took the platform off. In the bottom of the case had been written, I fitted a cone bearing to the lower part of the platform in 2013. Okay. I took the platform apart, and what's there? There is a cone bearing screwed in. The jewel had broken, and they put a cone bearing in it, and they'd round the corner of the balance staff off. And the guy had written, I put it in.
Never on the internet, would you like to actually meet me?
I want to be done to sign it. Sorry.
You should put it on that.
I had a ball out, put a bush in it, re-jewel it, plug an end stone, plug a new balance stone. But to sign the job like that, just yeah, probably. Comments had nothing on this guy. But you know, you just took the trouble to tap a thread in it. You know, that's beside the point. I'm off to Switzerland in June to do the polishing course. Okay, going via Japan and the Trans-Siberian Railway with my wife.
And where do you take the polishing course?
In Neuchâtel. Yeah, it's a 3-week course. And I'm going to Moscow and St. Petersburg. I have to go to the Hermitage Museum and stuff like that. So that's what I'm really looking for.
Hermitage. Oh. Do you know there's a plane that goes there, you don't take the train?
That's a trip we've been wanting to do. 2 other things. A friend of mine sent this article. It's from the Australiana, November 2014. And it's about John Arnold, Joseph Banks, and John Phillips, an Arnold watch that they found,
and John Hawkins, isn't it? Hawkins, yeah. Hawkins has got a half share in it, and they believe it's one of Arnold's earlier pieces that's been recased, and it's a repeat. So it's an interesting article. I'm going to copy it and give Trent a copy, but it's in the Australiana, November 2014.
Thanks, Roger. Excellent.
Thank you.
Yes. I wonder if, like, there was a lot of words said tonight. I mean, if anybody disagrees with my summary of the situation, I think it's basically that we are between a rock and a hard place, that negotiations with TAFE, whilst I think in good faith we should undertake, I don't think they're going to draw the sort of result that we're keen to achieve. And, you know, I think it would be disingenuous not to really pursue the discussions with them, but I can't really see. I mean, that the idea that I floated, I don't know if Trent thought about that, but the idea of trying to have some other learning package to support, you know, attendance at the college, I see as perhaps, you know, an option, but, you know, it's not one that makes me excited, because the hours of attendance now, if they're 50%, I guess you'd have to weigh up and say, I don't think practical work these days in the course is less than 50%. Is it, Trent, in the workshop? No. So anyway, look, it's a way of, in good faith, going to this vote, because we don't know who's going to win the election or what the result will be. So we can't really sit back and say, well, look, you know, it'll all be right. You know, something will happen, you know, but I don't think that Bed's done that bad a job that he's going to get pitched out straight away. I mean, he might, we don't know. But so I think, you know, that would be my first sort of thing. And I just wonder whether anyone wants to comment on that. But, you know, whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, or something we should do, or even about the depth of the sort of discussions that should take place. Thanks, Carl.
I think we've got to be realistic, okay? And if I may start like that. Listening tonight and listening what discussed and heard tonight, I think reading between the lines, unless that course is filled with 15 students, is not sustainable. Now, basically, I think the only positive what I heard out of it, which was surprised, is that what you said, that it doesn't matter if these people are indentured or not, okay, as long as 15 people. That's what basically literally he said, okay, which has altered from the past 2-3 years, where they only took in apprentices basically, which had no apprenticeship. So as we sit here now, I mean, unless we've been able to bring up this type of numbers, and probably what they say, look, okay, we've gone and been able to raise 15 this year, they probably say, okay, what is the possibility or what is the chance that you keep up producing 15 apprentices every year? And let us be honest, we can't give an undertaking like that. So hence, we're really, the only way we can get support and keep that course perhaps going is if there is really support coming from those big workshops which we have in Australia. Otherwise, I cannot see. I'll be honest, this is my honest opinion.
Okay.
Can I comment to that, Dean?
Yes, Andrew.
I do agree with Carl. I think that's right. I think as an entire industry, I think we need to be able to support TAFE. But I also, at a much smaller level, I know that nearly everybody I speak to says, oh, geez, I've got so much work, I've got this much backlog and all that sort of thing. And I guess I've spoken to a few people who are currently taking apprentices. But if everyone's got that much work, they say they don't quite know how to do it and that sort of thing, then one of the logical ways to solve that problem is staffing. So it seems to me a logical step to take on the premise. Train somebody that can fill that backlog and let your business expand to be able to cope with it.
Well, the irony really is that we have reached a point where you will have to take on an apprentice because there will no one else available.
Yeah. Particularly if you're saying what's going to happen in 5 years.
You can put ads in the paper what you want, unless you're going to steal someone from someone else, okay, and then it becomes a money issue that you say, okay, how much I have to pay for it? But let us be honest, there's a limit because you run a business. There's a limit how much how you can. So from that point of view, I really think the timing is actually very good because we are forced now to put on apprentices. If you want to get
keeps that course open.
Well, but in the end, let's be honest, it's easy to talk about it unless we really give some commitments and a whole, we're not going to succeed.
I think one thing that gets lost in all this is that we're not a regulated trade. You don't have to come in via an apprenticeship. You can employ a young bloke to work for you, teach him the trade, teach him what you want, keep paying him a reasonable rate. He in turn can go and call himself a watchmaker.
That is absolutely true.
I know, so, but we can't guarantee, I don't think, 18 apprenticeships every year to stay with TAFE, and that's what it amounts to.
I don't know.
Anyway, I think the point that I'm sort of gathering out of this is that there's some possible solutions that we see, whether they're achievable or not, about the one of, the adult entry program suggestion that came up. I think that was Carl, I'm not sure. I mean, there's some code in what that fellow said. You know how he wouldn't give a price? Because at the end of the day, they'll want to cover their costs on the class. And so if say we had 10 students and they work out what the cost of running that class is, and we had 3 or 4 people that came along and wanted to do it, they divide the rest of the cost of that class by 3 or 4. And they say that's what the fee is.
Yeah.
That's how TAFE does.
Yeah, because he's got a budget, he has to be within that. And it's okay, you forward the course, but that's what it costs you.
Yeah. So it's a tough one, but I think that you'd have to almost, I think you'd have to almost say, well, look, let's get a goal going where we'd have to try for a targeted 4 people a year that went into the course as adult entry, so that you could come up with some budgeted number that you could trust. If you could say our average is 8 and we could guarantee 4 others and you went to 12, then all of a sudden then you could come up with a number that we might be able to live with or not. But it's still going to be a reduction in hours, perhaps to 75%, isn't it, of what it is?
Well, the course content gets cut and the outcome quality obviously gets cut.
Well, I think that that was why I think if we entered into negotiations with good faith, I think we have to put on the table some resources that would support the apprentice so that he didn't have to do theory at the college. We reduce theory time attendance. And that just puts it back on the apprentice because it's not so easy, and not every apprentice can work well on their own either. So it's not a really the silver bullet, is it? But it's what a lot of other people have to do, and perhaps that, if that's what makes the difference, and all of a sudden we find, where we might spend 30% of the course in the theory room, if all of a sudden, you could make 20% of that at home, so you only had to find 10% of that. So all of a sudden you can start jigging the numbers and you can make them closer, and even some of the practical things might even be able to be done. In some places they could be done in the workshop, but not everywhere. But you have to have a really supportive employer to allow them to spend 3 hours a week at work working on practical projects that relate to their training. See, these are all the things that are possible, but you know, the application or making it work is going to be the challenge. But they're the sort of things I think that if we go and negotiate with them in good faith, I want to find how far they'll go, you know, and what they will really offer. But I suspect they won't go very far at all.
No.
I don't think they've got the room to go.
Okay, so I think, so do we agree just as a first principle then, that, you know, I just sort of like to get the feeling of everybody here that we enter into negotiations with TAFE in good faith, to see what outcomes we can get, the best possible outcomes we can get.
We have to do that.
Yeah, I think we have to do that. I don't think we've got any choice. And the sort of things that we can negotiate about are things like teaching resources. You know, I'm not sure about that elementary stuff. Can you guarantee that? I don't think you can. Doug disposed of that than I have.
Yeah, I was just going to make a comment about that, Ross. I've got 24 students on a Monday and Tuesday night that are just friends that come out to WCA, and I think we tap pretty well into other people send them to me, and I think we tap pretty well. But I can tell you, those guys are keen to learn, but they're not going to pay thousands of dollars because they want to do it to have fun with what they're doing. They don't want to. Very few would go into the business, and if they did go into the business, they would do it, set up their own business, and they don't need to produce paperwork.
I mean, would there be some skill sets? The other thing that came out is there could be some skills that you can make up short courses out of that those people might be interested in, or other people might be interested in.
I think there would be quite a lot of that. We don't have time to show them some of the things, and I think you could have like an 8-week, one night a week on doing platform escapements. And I think out of that, you would keep the room occupied, you would earn some money for the room, because the thing that scares me the most, if they snabble that space and all that stuff gets split up, it'll never ever get put back together. Never.
There's something else which does concern me, which wasn't raised really, that they reduced the hours of training from 240 to whatever 140 it is. Now, and he said, oh, you come out afterwards with a certificate. Now, are those exam papers being adapted to that? Because I would find it, as a student, very difficult being able to say for the exam, to produce sit for the exam, which has normally 100 hours more training, education, which I have to sit there. Or basically what they're saying is like you go to university that, okay, you get the 2 hour lectures and the rest you have to study.
I think that's the point Andrew's making all the way along. If you cut back the hours, you cut back the quality. And I think that in a way that's not negotiable, but the only part of it that could be negotiable could be some learning that could be done, you know, online at home.
Yeah, but that's, look, in the end, I wouldn't employ someone or have an apprentice who goes there, that the quality of the training has gone to such a stage where I find it's not worth it. I mean, you've got to be realistic about it.
Bruce, you want
with the reduction of teaching hours, obviously shortfall, is it possible there could be an advanced training? Which still brings the revenue to the TAFE and still employs teachers to do that part of the training?
I'd say the short answer is yes, Bruce. You've got to line the opening list. But what is an advanced trade course now? What's the technology that's challenging the industry right now that's different?
What I'm thinking of would be basically filling the shortfall of the teaching hours that we had before.
So have the students pay 2 lots of fees?
Yes.
Okay, that'd be sort of a commercial based course anyway.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Ross, I presume delivery of a syllabus at a specific campus is more or less expensive than delivering it at a different campus. Is that true? Like if you're delivering it at Sydney at Ultimo, more expensive than delivering it, let's say, North Sydney or Liverpool or?
Not in terms of, see, what they're saying is that there's this, the skills board is a trend that's determined the fees. And it's across the country.
So it doesn't matter where it's at.
I think there is one way of broadening it and get other numbers in. And I think is if you look what service is actually needed. I mean, if I may take, for instance, what you actually earlier said, you expressed what type of training you have and sort of what sort of people you need. And if I might take the example, so you have the watchmaker with the full training. Then you have people like on the exchanging movement. Probably there's people like polishers, cases, restorers. So now I think if that can be part of the class, so that you might have the eight apprentices. You might have 5 others. They doing the course on movement exchange.
Yeah, for some part of the time.
Exactly. And you could have those probably, that might run for, I don't know, 3-4 months or 5 months. And then you get another lot in. But it means the numbers, you still got the numbers.
Okay, that's a good, I've just made that. So integrate them with the C3.
Yes, so integrate others into it, which fills up the numbers, and if you can turn them over.
Across the skills.
Yeah. So in for instance, you say, okay, we will need a few conditions for exchanging movements. Okay, as you go, well, look here, there's at the moment 3 or 4 training, and say, okay, well, look, we might have a position, you come for a test or whatever, because that will be beneficial to the industry.
Okay, I'll go with that. So, yes, Michael.
How many of the other courses have only one teacher? If we start adding things on, it might be a requirement in this TAFE that there's going to be more than one teacher.
It's only going to be determined by hours.
Yeah.
How many hours he's got left?
His age. No, look, it is really about the number of teaching hours per week determines, how many teachers by and large. I mean, if we decided to run something where we didn't have the expertise in the current teacher, and then we had to put on another teacher, well, that'd be a backward step.
If they were to require that.
Yeah.
I think we've got probably 2 choices, haven't we? We take the hours that we can get and build the syllabus best we can, or we pull the plug.
That's it. In a nutshell, that's it. But I think we need to go into negotiations with in good faith to see what best possible outcome we can get, and come back and talk about what's offered. Or get it around through the emails and things like that. But there has been some good ideas that have come across. The short skills courses, whether they can be integrated with the C3 course, because the people doing the C3 course probably need those skills too. So it wouldn't be as if you're trying to teach 2 groups in the classroom. Yeah. The ones that need to do, whether it's movement exchange or case finishing or something like that, well, then you could just, that could be part of the set.
With case finishing, that could be incorporated with jewellery. That's a similar process, isn't it?
Well,
not really.
It's from a logical point of view, it probably that's right, but they moved the jewellery section to Greenmore, and it's struggling just the same as we are.
I think in having it structured like that, it gives us something else. There might be people doing this for 3-4 months, and some of them probably say, oh, there's no way I'm going to do this. But some might continue and actually go into apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Which gain people which you never have otherwise.
Anyway, so I think that probably I've got a few ideas there, and we'll document that, we'll circulate it, and we look forward to any more feedback you want to give on some of those ideas, just to work them up a little bit, so when we get into serious negotiations, we can use those. I mean, I think the second thing is the political strategy, isn't it? What sort of political strategy do we want to adopt after this meeting? Having in mind that in 4 weeks' time, we've got a state election. And, you know, it's easy to write letters to the minister who's probably got an in-tray that he can't jump over now, and he's got the tea ladies answering the letters now.
Already, TAFE's been mentioned though in the Labor ads.
Yeah.
What the government is going to do to TAFE. So, you know, the starting point is already there.
Yes, I think that's true. So how do we go about to get into that?
Well, I think
Doug's got some ideas.
Just a point, you never see your politicians, they're gone. Now they're on your railway stations, they're everywhere, in your shopping centres. Get some sort of a story that you can hand out to them. And I think if you said you had some letters that you could put together and some information and get if everybody in this room went and saw their local member, think how many local members. Now, it might not go anywhere, no guarantee, but if it's, they say, geez, those bikes go right in my face, never heard of them. And in fact, I bet if you ask most politicians, they think we don't exist. They think watchmakers die.
But it's the issue about the tech, which is it's not about watchmaking, it's the issue about the tech.
Yeah, well,
and I think that is what's emphasized.
Funding for TAFE is
this is the issue.
Features in these Labor ads.
Yeah, but that's what you do, is you say, hey, here's a small industry that looks like you don't care about us. There's a lot of those small.
So it's about approaching your local member about the TAFE system.
Yeah.
Not about how we.
No. But if they ask you where you come from,
because the TAFE system's broken. It is broken.
It is. Yeah.
It's fixed.
Well, yeah, and as I understand what you said tonight, unless, no matter how we cobble courses or anything together, unless we can produce enough money to pay the TAFE overheads and the cost of the teacher, we're gone.
The issue is we can't even pay for it. We can't even pay for it. For
No,
instance,
the income from any course we put
the
out.
only thing which makes it work is really the numbers.
Yep, it's to generate those funds.
Yeah.
First of all, TAFE's overheads, general overheads, plus the cost of the teacher.
So is it then we should tap into funding for TAFE campaign? And I guess what would be really good is because you can't look on the internet and find out who's standing in what seat, can you? You can see who your local member is, and you see who's going to stand.
Oh, yeah, pretty sure you can. Should be able to know. Just a couple of comments with regard to that.
So, good to say, Ross, the electoral commission that have all your candidates.
That'll be the letterbox like that.
Yeah, but that'll happen for example.
We could always set up a picket line, couldn't we?
Or we can do a ticket line.
We won't fix whatever we get it on television. We put up some banners.
So what can we do to support that? Can we, I'll have a look and see if I can find out that information about who's standing and we could circulate that.
Well, calls to the Labor Party headquarters wouldn't hurt.
You really need to get onto their campaign director and just point out how successful that model was in Victoria. Like, no one expected a result, I don't think, in Queensland the way it turned out. It was the biggest majority in history, and suddenly they're a one-term government. Victoria was really very close to call, and I think they did play a part in Labor winning there. I do follow politics a little bit in New South Wales, and I think from all accounts it looks as though the Liberals will win. But a good, strong campaign might frighten them too.
It makes them think.
That's right. We can't
Puts
afford
back on the right.
And I think the reality is, what we've said is that squeaky doors do get some sort of service and oil. I think the reality is that anything we can do is actually going to be for potential benefit. We can't guarantee. There are no guarantees as well. The Facebook site, that Stop TAFE campaign, we are running on our Facebook campaign. It has reached and something in the order of 4,000 or 5,000 people through the WCA's Facebook page. It gets that sort of feedback. People pick it up, they run with it, they share with it. So the reality is people realise it's a real issue in the community. People understand that TAFE's being screwed and funding's been taken away from it. It's also true that TAFE are looking to fix their bottom line. They've been told they need to do more with less, basically, and they can get rid of courses that cost the money, they will. One of the suggestions which I was given by someone who remained anonymous is that we could always piggyback our course off another RTO that does do a similar sort of thing. Someone that provides a service in a private sector that's has a similar sort of outlook or provides a similar sort of set of structured courses to what watchmaking would be. And then provide teaching, which would be just a continuation of teaching through that through a private RTO. They would then find that easier to set up an RTO and cheaper because it would, that's what they do.
I think that's sort of a fallback position.
It is a fallback position, but the reality is we're at the moment, if they say to us in April, by the way, we're not going to run the course at all this year, we run the risk that we then wait for next year and we don't run it next year. At what point do we actually need to say that we're going to go and try and find another option? So maybe we're not far away from that, looking at those options.
Anyway, look, I'm conscious of the time because the club wants to close, I think, before too long. So what about we put out some ideas that will be based on, the negotiations we've made with TAFE, and I'm beginning to think, as Andrew said, a really short message about TAFE cuts rather than concentrating on watchmaking, and using, for all of us to use any opportunity, a note to the local candidates and things like that, which just say, you're over it, we're losing our course. There needs to be a solution for TAFE to keep its doors open, that sort of really simplistic sort of program. And perhaps if we can find the list of candidates for the electorates, we can circulate that. So we can do that efficiently. So, I'll do some searching on that, and if we can circulate that information, I'm happy to enter into some sort of contact with, as Graham suggested, to the Labor Party directly, and perhaps even to the Liberal Party directly, so that we're not being one-sided on it, and just say that as an organisation, we're really concerned about the future of TAFE. We want to know what the policies are and where we're heading.
Aren't the other courses as concerned with they quite happy to say, that's okay, we understand.
No, I think it's the same everywhere, Michael. There's a lot of, I understand, because I've got sources as well, that, the fellow that my neighbour was not long ago stopped with the Premier's Department, so he's still pretty, and he was a TAFE Institute director before that. And he understands that all of the TAFE directors now, they're starting to gather the numbers and look to the future, because they can't continue to employ all the people they're employing now. And they're already targeting, areas where redundancies will be made. But nothing's being said till after the election.
Is it realistic for them to make people redundant? Could they do without them?
Can't. Oh, well, I think the short answer is if you've got the money, you don't mind if they go. I've been through that experience myself, so I know that's what happens. And I've seen other courses closed, and I've been party to that too. And it's just what happens in big organisations. There's not much heart involved, and that's why it's got to be with the politicians.
Ross, can we not quite as hard a position as us, but do want to invite them on the 8th as well. We can take it and the procedure had to locksmiths there, jewellers there, and we're the local jewellers. They too must be in very, very similar straits to.
Yeah, they are. I think Trent had to talk to their teacher out in the other day. And they're in a difficult situation too. But see, I don't see any relationship between the JAA and the trade course. I might be wrong. John Evans might know that.
Well,
I don't think there is.
BDM, manufacturing jewellers.
Well, I think a lot of those groups seem to have fallen by the wayside.
John, any input?
No, there's not a, TAFE courses are hurting in jewelry, but there isn't a lot of liaison between the JAA and the TAFE courses. They talk, but nothing happens, and TAFE's been unhappy with the JAA not being a little stronger.
I was talking to somebody in Orange today, and they've got somebody that's halfway through through a jewelry course, but she's desperately trying to figure out how she's going to finish an apprenticeship that just can't be finished. So, same thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that the only idea I get out of that is that we should make sure the JAA are aware of that the watchmaking course is also affected. So we should have a dialogue with them so they understand that. I mean, that's the first base thing. And because if they're going to lobby at all, then they need to know the extent of the issue.
And
we need to be fairly careful or what we say to the members about entering into negotiations with TAFE, because the immediate thought will be that TAFE is the problem and can solve
it.
Yes. Yeah, okay. And toolmakers too, of course, by their own admission, the reality is that you could have thought that 8, really?
Look, I've been across that Sydney Institute. Kurt was teaching in fitting and machining, and I know they went from, at one stage I was running about 12 fitting and machining stage 1 and 3 tool making. Now, not long after I left, it was down to 2 classes, combined classes, fitting and machining and tool making at Sydney College. And when you have in mind that, we closed North Sydney, Randwick, St George, Gymea, so where do all those students go?
Yeah. Where did all the manufacturing in Australia actually manage to?
Well, that's a question for another place, isn't it?
Yeah, shocking.
Anyway,
just one more thing. Look, don't forget your local radio talkback. It can be very, very effective, or if you do know your journalists. The journalists are always looking for stories. Talkback radio, Andrew, you're the one, I believe, of it. You can be a little bit more local and target watchmaking in that, and you can tie it into that broader attitude that governments, and that's both federal and state, have towards manufacturing. We're losing all our manufacturing. This is the only TAFE course for watchmaking in Australia. When that's gone, it won't come back. And I think you can generate a lot of interest through talkback radio, or, as I say, journalists are always looking for stories. They love these small local interest type stories, and you can do very well at it.
Yeah, well, I think that's a little job for all of us, local papers and things like that, isn't it?
Local papers, I must say, are really good. One of the most interesting stories that we had run recent times, which quite a few people in the room have benefited of, was a story run, what was actually mainly meant to go into the North Shore Times, and it ran in something like 25 odd different newspapers from Victoria to Queensland border.
Wow.
And they're all small little local papers, but the response was just ridiculous. And that was 12 months ago. I still get phone calls where people have kept that article and they're ringing me from Newcastle saying, I understand you're a local watchmaker. No, you need to go and see David Thomas. And just right across the board, where they're basically reading from all these little newspapers, and the amount of people that read them is ridiculous. You'd be surprised what your local radio station, your community radio station, your community newspapers, your local newspaper, all that sort of thing. They are thrilled to take stories from local people. It's an ingredient in the way the papers are put together. They need a bit of local, a bit of colour, a bit of personal local story that needs to go into those sort of papers. Unlike the Telegraph, where we might get page 5 or 6. But no, I would speak to ABC Radio 3 times a week. And getting traction through one of the producers to get a story to air is a art all by itself, and the chances you get if you get through is very small. And keep doing it, drip by drip by drip, and get through eventually.
Anyway, look, I think that probably the time's nigh, and I really would like to thank you all for coming along. As I say, it's an issue that Trent and I worry a lot about and have fairly strong feelings about, and it's great to think that so many people have turned up to join in the discussion. And,
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody on the internet. Can we all just turn around and wave? We have created this tonight. I just wanted to thank Andrew about his two teams.
Particularly Michael. Thank you very much.
That's being recorded, isn't it?
Yes, you by the way,
You can go and watch
you can go onto this and watch it later on if you want to. If you feel like rehashing it again and again and again.
Anyway, I'll leave you with the fact that we're going to be having a technical seminar coming up at the end of March, probably the first week of April, but we'll keep you posted on that at the Sydney Tech. I'm sure they'll be using it, but anyway, we're going to be doing it on automatic watch servicing, and we're going to be looking at the Amiga 565 and yeah, the 2892. So if you'd like to get a little bit of insight into those two colours, please come along and keep you posted. But I'd like to thank Ross for being our moderator and chairperson. Giving a great overview of the trade, and certainly for all you guys to give your time and participate. We need to carry on from here. Don't go away and say, well, I did my part. We've got to really step up now, knock on a few doors or write a few letters or take it that one step further. Because if we don't, we could very well be looking very sad if we don't have it.
yeah, when your local paper comes in this week, let it to you.
And be careful not to talk it down, to try to find your positive spin somewhere, your hope for the future. Those sort of things, not your little demise of the industry, that sort of thing.
There's Doug Mendy here tonight too, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, well, thanks, so. All right, you can all go home now. I need to leave.
Does anyone want to buy one of these things before we go out the door?
Before you go,